Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where, as always, we learn through the misfortunes of others. I am your host, Uncivil Law, and we are here with the continuing coverage of the Alex Murdaugh trial in a state in which I've spent 20 years of my life, the great state of South Carolina. It is a great state. Recommended for sure. Wouldn't mind living there again. Maybe my favorite state to live in. Texas is nice too, but then again, I spent 20 years living in South Carolina. And this is bringing back memories of home. Just watching the people talk and how they interact, and the jury selection. It's a warming thing on the whole. I find it very reminiscent of the Great South and the culture down there. It's a very nice and very beautiful place in its features as well. In the upcountry, Greenville, booming tech town. Great out in the Appalachian Mountains out there. So you got the hills and the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So you got some nice stuff up there. Then in the lowlands and the swampy area, really pretty. Charleston, pretty major town. Beaufort, just really kind of cool culture. Very interesting place to be. All those good things. So it's a beautiful state. We are here with our continuing coverage of the Alex Murdaugh trial in the great state of South Carolina, the Paul Murdaugh state. A state which has a interesting part of U.S. history as well, for better and for worse. It's a state with a lot of interesting things in its culture. With the crescent moon as a symbol of the state from back when it was a colony. Really cool. Anyways, so far this morning, we had a hearing on evidentiary issues. We had a hearing on evidentiary issues on whether and to what extent we can bring in financial stuff as motive. And the judge has not yet rendered an opinion on that. But it seems from overall context that the judge is inclined to allow some, and it seems like kind of all of it in. Not for at least the reasons the defense, at least in my humble opinion, have not done a really good job of attacking the issue. The issue is not whether or not it's clear and convincing, because it totally is. The issue is whether or not it's sufficiently tied to the murders, the nexus, the connection. That's the problem. But the defense, not so much on addressing that issue. So, yeah. The judge just called on the jury, so give me just a second to add in the screen. Don't panic. We won't miss anything. It's all fine. Yeah, I know about the palmetto tree being on the flag. I don't think I said anything about that. I know why the palmetto tree is on the flag. I was talking about the crescent moon and its long history. The crescent moon's history is interesting in terms of stuff. I know my South Carolina. I know my palmetto flag. I know my crescent moon. I know the things. Don't at me when it comes to South Carolina. I lived in South Carolina for 20 years. It's where I went to elementary, mid-school, high school, and college. So, yeah. You missed the start. You thought former colony and crescent moon on the flag was referring to Singapore? No, I was talking about South Carolina. I was talking about the colony of South Carolina. Oh, Lord. Also home to the Marine Corps, Parris Island, near Charleston, where the Marine Corps trains many of its new troops. Air Force Base.
The jury is present, sir.
All right, thank you, and welcome back.
The tourist trap that is.
You may call your next witness.
With the mini golf. So much mini golf. So much mini golf in Myrtle Beach. Why is there that much mini golf in Myrtle Beach? Do we need this much mini golf? Apparently we do.
Raise your right hand and left hand. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please on the witness stand. State your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
My name is Dylan Hightower,
Dylan, how you doing?
Hightower.
Investigator Hightower, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Where are you employed, sir?
I currently work for the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office as an investigator. I also supervise the Criminal Intelligence Unit within our office.
All right, well, what is the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office?
The District Attorney of the 14th Circuit, which is comprised of 5 counties, Allendale, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties. Our office handles all general sessions-related criminal offenses in court.
Well, labor.
All right. And specifically your role as an investigator, what are your duties at the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office?
Yes, sir. My duties are to prepare cases for trial, locate and identify witnesses, interview witnesses, obtain any additional evidence that may be needed prior to trial. We also prepare witness testimony for all of our potential witnesses for all of our trials. Also, outside of preparing cases for trial, I assist with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies with active and criminal investigations.
Okay.
So,
And can you just briefly describe your background in law enforcement that led to your employment at the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office?
Yes, so in 2010, I graduated from the University of South Carolina in Columbia with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology. Soon thereafter, a criminal intelligence position became available within the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office, to which I then applied and accepted. Initially, when I first was hired, I attended a 4-week on-the-job training at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division in the Fusion Center for Criminal Intelligence Analysis School.
check 1, 2.
Afterward, I attended the PenLink Call Analysis Training Center there in Columbia as well. In 2013,
More, higher?
I became a
Little
Class
more?
1 certified law enforcement officer. In 2014,
Check
I
more.
attended the Fundamentals, ETS Fundamentals
Let's
of Call
see.
Detail Record Analysis in Pinehurst, North Carolina.
Well, let's see.
In
my
2015,
volume,
I
100%.
attended
Take a look at
and
my
became a
settings. Check
sustained
1, 2.
secure view
Check 1, 2.
cellular
Okay, that
forensics
looks about
operator
right.
to obtain the
That's good.
evidence
All right,
from a specific device or telephone, cellular telephone. In 2016, if I may refer to my notes.
Yes.
The joys of getting the volume right within the browser are just so much fun.
Later on in 2015, I attended a course, Gladiator Cellular Forensics course, where we learned about ESPA and GAR. ESPA stands for Enterprise
I love his pen.
Sensor Processing and Analytics.
I assume that's the
GAR
pen from the
stands
solicitor's
for
office, but I did
Gladiator
look at the little
Autonomous
flag on the
Receiver.
pen like that. That was cool.
Essentially, that class taught us to use specific devices and software to identify digital footprints of cellular towers within a specific area.
Also,
In 2017, I attended a operator course for Black Bag
and
Mobilize,
start being an
which is a
investigator for the
forensic tool
prosecutor in South
to
Carolina.
extract data off
Did
of
that
a cellular
happen?
telephone. In 2018, I attended the FBI CAST. CAST stands for Cellular Analysis Survey Team, on a class involving historical cell site analysis, which identifies tower activity, tower orientation, sector information of incoming and outgoing calls on a specific telephone number.
And Investigator Hatter, I'm going to stop you there. So as part of your job as investigator.
Might need more Kurt. Well, that's always a good thing to hear. I'm glad we
Your
need
role
more.
is to
That's
help
plus.
with cell
That's
tower,
good
cell
news.
records and cell tower information, correct?
Yes, sir, among other things.
And you've
Little hard
also
to hear
had
me.
training on downloading
See.
and doing extracts from
My
phones
volume.
as well,
Oh, I could
correct?
change
I do, yes, sir.
output volume.
All right.
What happens if I jack this number
Is
up?
it unusual for you to respond?
Did I
to
just get a
murder
whole
scenes
lot
in-
louder just now?
No, sir, not at all.
I bet I did.
And you personally
I just
met the
got the
defendant
shit
in in this case, Mr. Alex Murdaugh, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And does Mr. Alex Murdaugh, or at least at one point, have an association
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
14th Circuit?
All right. Cool.
Yes, sir, he did.
What was that association?
He was identified as a volunteer solicitor within our office.
All right. Let's try that then.
When you say assistant solicitor, what does an assistant solicitor do?
They prosecute cases in General Sessions Court.
Sounds
you've,
muffled.
In your
Sounds
role, you've
muffled.
participated in a number of trials before,
Check
correct?
1 2
I
1
have. I've been
2.
doing this for
Check
approximately
1 2.
coming
Check
up on
1
12
2
and a
1
half
2.
years.
Have you had an opportunity to participate in any trials with the defendant, Richard or Alexander Murdaugh?
Yes, sir, there was one.
And approximately when was that?
Probably 2015, 2016. It was a murder case out of Hampton County.
And what role did Mr. Alexander Murdaugh fill?
Muffled. Bad
He
before,
was
better.
essentially
Sports
one of the
had high.
prosecutors
Really,
on
it's
the
high.
case.
I can barely
His
hear
father,
it.
Randolph Murdaugh, was technically the lead on the case. And
Covering
I
the
spoke
speak.
with
Really?
and met with prior
Ethan's
to my
covering the.
testimony
Hold
at the
on.
trial.
Let me just reboot my entire thing. Hold on.
All right. Let's move forward to June 8th of 2021. You recall that day, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
And did you have an occasion to respond to 4147 Moselle Road here in Hampton or Colleton County?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And briefly explain how you became involved and why you responded out there on that day.
So that morning, multiple phone calls were crossing through multiple employees throughout our office regarding the incident that occurred. We being myself, two other investigators, my solicitor and my deputy solicitor, traveled to Sled Low Country here in Walterboro and attended a briefing involving all the law enforcement agencies responsible for the investigation. During that
2 3
briefing, we
4.
learned more about
Check
the
1 2 3
particulars of what had
4.
occurred.
How are we
And
sounding
then
now?
afterward, we had all traveled together in multiple vehicles to 4147 Moselle Road.
Okay. So yourself and several other 14th Circuit investigators responded, correct?
Yes, sir. I drove with one other investigator riding with me. One additional investigator met us there.
right,
Captain
fine.
Ryan Neal.
Hopefully that'll do it then.
With the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division was in the vehicle with Solicitor Stone and Deputy Solicitor Thornton.
And now, you just testified that it's not unusual for you yourself to respond to murder scenes, correct?
No, sir. And all of the murder cases that I've been involved with and any type of criminal proceeding, probably 95% of those scenes I've actually gone to.
Okay. And was it unusual for the solicitor to respond to a scene that quickly after an incident in your experience?
No, sir, not at all. Again, we, as a staff involved with the prosecution team, we had
The judge has not ruled on the financial stuff yet.
If we go to a courtroom.
All right. And just so it's clear, I don't know if you said it yet, but who is the solicitor of the 14th Circuit?
Solicitor's Duffy Stone.
And he'd be your direct boss, right?
I go through the Deputy Solicitor Sean Thornton, but
He'd be the ultimate boss.
the ultimate boss is Solicitor Stone, yes, sir.
All right. And once you got to the scene, what did you do?
Writing my
Once we
writing my
arrived on
settings
scene,
down
we
won't do
met
any
with
good
Captain Ryan
because
Neal,
I
kind of
have
all
to
in a
adjust
group.
compared to
Captain
the
Neal,
court audio,
then
which
walked
keeps
around the scene
changing.
and kind of noted
So I
different
appreciate
points of
write down
view,
my settings. It's just
different
I'm not sure it would
pieces
do any good.
of,
But
The crime scene had already been relinquished at that point by the crime scene agents. There was no crime scene tape up. It was wide open. There are multiple members of the law firm there.
South Carolina, the prosecutor's
other,
called solicitor.
SLED agents as well. We had all kind of walked around the scene.
Lawyers in
around
general
the
aren't
barn,
called
around the
solicitor.
kennels,
The prosecutor's called
identified the
solicitor in
points of
South
interest
Carolina.
of where
Why?
each of the bodies were
Because
with Paul and Maggie, and then kind of circulated around the property and got a better visual of what all actually occurred.
And while you're there, did you bring any equipment with you to help aid in the investigation?
Yes, sir, I did.
What did you bring?
Our 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office drone.
Okay. I'm going to show you
which
some
is
pictures.
ironic in some ways because
So they are
in the UK, the solicitor, a
Exhibit,
solicitor, is a
242.
transactional lawyer primarily. Solicitors don't appear in court. That's barristers.
241.
So, and all the
240.
prosecutor does, of course, is appear in court. They don't do transactional work.
239,
Well, they're called solicitor because reasons.
237.
There's no reason for it. It's just a thing they do.
Get these papers apart. 238. Do you recognize those pictures, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah.
What are those pictures?
This is drone imagery of the scene right around the kennels and the general vicinity around the kennels.
And that was from a drone you operated?
Yes, sir, it is.
And about what time do you recall that you took those pictures and what day?
It was on June 8th.
Words
2021,
sometimes mean different
between
things in
1:30 and
UK
2:30
English
PM.
versus US English. This is the operative lesson for the day. Good times. Thank you, Andrea, for the gift memberships. That's very kind of you. And thank you for retweeting Judy. I appreciate everyone who helps to retweet the pinned comment and bring attention to it. You can be like Judy and also retweet the pinned comment.
This kind of statement are offered the exhibits 242, 241, 240, and 230.
Without objection.
I'll need the Elmo, please. Okay, can you see this picture on your screen, Investigator Hightower?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, and what is this image of?
So this is closest kind of in the direction of the house, looking back towards the hangar area, as well as the dog kennels off to your right. My vehicle is right dead center in the picture, and then other SLED agents' vehicles were over on the left.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to step down real quick to point out a couple things, if you don't mind.
So apparently in this particular jurisdiction, the solicitor's office gets involved real early.
But can you point out?
Because I think if I understood him correctly, he said like the solicitor was basically there like the day or the day after the murder. So, the prosecutor's investigators, they are doing the investigation like as a primary investigator. So,
Paul's body was
okay,
right here.
that's
near
how
the
they
dog
roll down there.
kennels.
Okay, and where was Maggie's body?
She would have been right under this this area over here, just on the corner, around the edge.
And you testified by the time you got to the scene, the select crime scene, you cleared it, and it departed, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you say, you can take a seat again. When you say that crime scene had cleared, what does that mean to you?
It was no longer an active crime scene. Once the crime scene tape is removed, it's no longer active.
So other individuals could walk and view the crime scene at that point?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right, and that was Exhibit 240. And I'm going to show you Exhibit 241. And that's the same general area, a little bit closer on where Maggie and Paul's body were, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. All right, and now I'm going to show 242. All right, and that's a little bit lower angle, looking at the same area where Maggie and Paul's body were, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
How can you process that whole crime scene in less than 24 hours? They're just that good down there in South Carolina.
And I'm going to show you Exhibit 239. Okay. What is this? What is this angle? What is it looking at? And in fact, if you want to step down again and point to the jury.
I'm half tempted to apply for the South Carolina bar because I think I can for the next 3 years, basically on my current credentials. So without doing any additional work, I just have to like do some basic paperwork and pay the money, and I can be a lawyer in South Carolina, which sounds kind of cool. I'm tempted.
Yeah, that's better. Okay. So at the top.
Why
of this
not?
picture,
Money.
kind of the center,
Also,
what is-
the compliance would be a pain in the ass.
So this here is
The more and more
residence,
states I add, the more and more
4147 Moselle
compliance
Road.
obligations I have.
That's
The
actual
CLE
residence.
is basically
This is
the
field
reason.
between
Continuing legal
the residence
education.
and the kennels.
The more and more states I'm in, the
Again,
more and more
the
CLE I
kennels,
have to do,
the
and
edge
more
of
and
the
more pain in
kennels
the
is
ass
right
it is.
there. You can see the
That
top of the
and
hangar
also
there as
money.
well. So this is a direction.
would be the reasons.
Looking directly over.
Most of the compliance
hangar,
costs.
Pointing directly back towards the residence.
All right, and I'm going to ask you to sit down a second, but I want to call your attention to this line of trees right here. You see that, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, in this picture, you can take a seat. This picture was taken again when?
These were taken on the afternoon of June 8th, 2021.
And we see some pine trees kind of running diagonally between the kennels and the house.
It's not even money for
Yes, sir,
CLE.
you
It's actually the
And
time
you were out there
that
at
would be the
scene
biggest
personally,
burden.
correct?
I was.
It's not even the
Ken,
money.
from
It's
the
just
best
the
of your
time
recollection, can you remember
of
the
complying.
approximate
It's just
height of most of these trees?
It
at
becomes
that time?
more of a time. It's
I would
it becomes too much of a
approximate
time
probably
burden.
6, 7, maybe 8 feet on certain ones. But you did get a clear channel or clear view back towards the residence.
Okay. And you've been out there more recently, haven't you?
Yes, sir, I have.
And did you notice any differences with those trees, at least present day, compared to June of 2021?
Yes, sir. It's much more overgrown than what it looks like in that picture.
Have those trees grown higher?
Much higher, yes, sir.
Have the trees grown higher? Well,
I'll
that's
show you.
type of
This is going to be
commentary.
exhibit 238. And this is approximately the same angle, correct?
The same angle, just the drone shifted backwards a little bit so you could actually see the full hanger,
Trees
the full kennels,
grow.
as well as
Trees
the
do
residence.
grow sometimes.
And finally, I'm going to show you exhibit 237. All right, and what angle is this in relation to the others?
So the idea behind this was to identify both driveways accessing the residence as well as accessing the barn area. So this is further back, kind of closest to the field area, looking back towards the hangar, the dog kennels, and the 2 driveways that you could travel or arrive onto the property.
And this gives a good angle of those trees we were just discussing to show how closely they're spaced, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Let's step back a little bit chronologically, a little earlier in the day of June 8th, 2021 for you. While you're at the scene, did
Who
the
can say
Maggie's
how
cell phone
the
come up in
trees
conversation?
grow?
Yes, sir, it did.
How the
Describe the
wind
context of it. How
blows?
did it come up? And
Still in
who was there
Hightower.
when it came up?
Dot dot
I
dot.
was
dot.
during the general overview of the scene. We started asking questions about pieces of physical evidence that might have been identified. I learned at that time that Paul's phone was found on him, and Maggie's phone was not located anywhere near the scene during scene processing. So therefore, I explored other options to try and identify where her phone may be.
And you testify a lot.
Carolyn, in response to your question, you can sometimes use one CLE to
Yes,
in normal
sir.
states.
Every case, I would say 95% of all of our
Sometimes,
cases we put into a
but-
courtroom involve all forms of digital forensics.
Sometimes.
Cell phone extractions.
So, yeah.
Cell phone records, things of that nature. It's a
It
part of
becomes
everyday
harder
life.
and harder
So with that
to.
background, when you learned Maggie's phone was
The more
missing,
states
what-
you're in,
did you have
the
any
harder it
ideas?
would be to comply with all the
Yes, sir.
CLE
What
requirements
idea did
at
you
the
have?
same time.
Knowing that they were the Murdaughs were a close-knit family, I figured one of the family members might have had her direct location on Find My iPhone, knowing that they all utilized iPhones.
And did you communicate that idea to anybody?
Yes, sir, I did. I spoke with John Marvin Murdaugh on scene.
All right. And what did he do in reaction to your suggestion?
He believed that one of the family members did have access to Maggie Murdaugh's phone location via Find My iPhone. He left for a few minutes, short minutes, and came back to me with a cell phone believed to be Buster Murdaugh's phone.
You're not 100% positive whose phone
Not
it was?
100% positive.
All right. And what did you do once this phone was handed to you by John Marvin?
I took possession of the phone, obviously looked at the virtual map, walked in the direction of where I believed it to be to see if it might be in the general vicinity of where we were around the dog kennels. As I walked probably 30, 40 yards, I realized I was much further away than I originally anticipated. So I then went back to my vehicle. I got in with John Marvin. I had possession of the phone the entire time. Two of our
Is
other
there a state that's
investigators,
harder to become a
Solicitor
lawyer
General
in, or are
Woodward
they basically
and
the same?
Investigator Don
Well,
Pinto,
the only state that's
rode
really
with me back
distinct is
towards the general
Louisiana,
area of where the
because
device was showing.
Louisiana is French.
Okay.
Instead
And
of
so
English.
you had this
So-
family phone the entire time, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
You were
Louisiana
tracking
is
to
probably
where
the
Maggie's phone
most
exactly
different, I
was.
would think.
I was driving and looking down at the phone, making sure I was going in the proper
yeah.
direction.
Approximately how far did you
I
go?
can kind of cheat
About a
any
half a
state's
mile
law, but
from
Louisiana
the
is
entrance
a little,
to
yeah.
the barns, the driveway to the barns.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit
Yeah.
227. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
That's an overview from Google Maps that shows both the residence as well as the general location of where I ultimately located Maggie Murdaugh's phone along the edge of Moselle Road.
And you prepared that?
I
to show
did.
the location?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If this guy winds up being more competent than Sled, it would not surprise me. Sled sucks.
And state moves 227 to evidence. Okay, can you see that on your screen, Investigator Hightower?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, we're going to ask you to step down one more time. All right, on this overview, can you point out where the residence is for 4147 Moselle?
The residence is here. You can see the driveway here as well. And then the kennels are up here.
Okay. And there's a marker on there, correct, that says general location of phone?
Yes, sir, that'd be right here.
All right. And that's where you found...
Sled needs me.
Yeah, so
Lord
I was
have
walking,
mercy.
when I was trying to get a better
Oh, God,
idea of where
don't
the
ask
phone
me to
actually
fix
was.
Sled.
I was
Oh,
walking up and down
Jesus.
the driveway here to the
I
kennels.
thought you guys liked me.
Obviously, looking down at the phone, trying to identify the general location. Once I started to realize the phone was much further away, that's when I jumped into my vehicle. I turned and went southeast of the residence area. Once I got to this specific area where the field kind of opened up, I started getting closer and closer to the blue dot that you would see on Find My iPhone. Once I got closer and closer, we all got out on foot and walked the property to identify where that phone was.
Okay. And you can take a seat.
Thank you, Dee, for the gift memberships as always. Very appreciated. Thank you.
And I'm going to hand you exhibit 236, 235, 234, 233, 232, 231, 230, 229, and 228. Do you recognize any of those?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, and what are those?
These are photographs that I took of Maggie Murdaugh's phone as it was laying in the brush area or leaved area closer to Moselle Road, about 15, 20 feet away from Moselle Road.
And did you ever personally pick up Maggie's phone?
I never touched the phone. Once I identified the location of where the phone was, I contacted Captain Ryan Neal with South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. He sent a team with Special Agent...
We have a new guest
Palliser
to the channel.
...and Special Agent Jeff Croft to take possession of the device.
Hey, Kurt.
How you doing? Welcome to the channel, Southern Law.
Touched.
It
Correct.
has
Thanks.
not been touched. No,
All
sir.
right. At this time, the state's going to move exhibits 236,
What state you out of?
235,
North Carolina.
233,
All right, Inferior Carolina.
231, 228,
It does have north in it.
227, 230, 232, and 234 into evidence.
So what did they do with the testimony about the financial crimes, Judge?
No
Let it in.
decision.
Without
We've
objection.
decided, I guess, to defer to some later time yet.
Okay.
So, the judge just says, like, let's
I'm
move
going
on
to
to
show
other
you
things.
first
Okay.
exhibit 230. All right, and in the center of this, I see two orange flags. Do you see those?
Yes, sir, I do.
What are those orange flags?
So once I located the device, I found some standard landscape flags laying around. I then obtained those, walked over towards where the phone actually was, put one towards the phone and one kind of where you could see from the roadway as the SLED agents were responding to collect it.
Okay, so where was Maggie's phone in relation to these two orange flags again?
So it'd be the furthest one away. This is just a point of view from the street looking back towards where the phone was.
I wonder how many jurors are in a
And,
dream state right now.
We see, looks like
Watch with
pavement in the
this.
foreground, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is Moselle Road.
And so that represents the edge of the road, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And just so it's clear, is this the north side of the road or south side of the road?
This would be,
Well, let's go back to the map.
Southern Law does have a really cool background. I agree with his office. It does look nice.
227. So this represent north-south is up and down on this map you prepared?
yes, sir, it does.
Okay, all right. So is the phone found on the right side of Moselle Road on this picture or the left side?
It would be on the right side during from this angle.
Okay, I'm going to show you Exhibit 234. And do you recognize what's in that picture?
Yes, sir, I do.
And right in the center of that picture, what is that?
That is the Apple iPhone that actually had a camouflage case with an orange tint to it, and there was standing water on top of the screen.
Okay. And I see a little black area if you look up and left of the phone in the center of the picture there. Do you know what that was, or was that anything significant?
I don't believe it was anything significant. From what I recall, it might have been a bottle or something of that nature.
Okay. I'm going to show now Exhibit 231. Okay. And I believe in the center of this picture, towards the bottom, what is that?
That is the cell phone identified as Maggie Murdaugh's phone.
And we see an orange flag just a little bit in front of it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And is that the orange flag you placed?
It is.
All right. And then in the distance, I see a line, a white line. It doesn't show very clear on the Elmo. But what is that? And I can bring the picture to you if you need.
Well, I could explain what this picture is of looking back towards, because based off the glare, I can't even see the roadway.
Right. I'll show you. Okay. What? On this far line here, what is that?
This back here?
In front of that.
Okay,
that
this
white.
is 40. This is Moselle Road
Okay.
here. This is just on the opposite side of the cell phone, looking back towards the field area, the trees for line of reference to identify where it was actually located.
Okay. All right. And can you approximate the distance from the road that you found this phone?
I did not step it off or measure it, but I would say between 15 and 20 feet.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna show you exhibit. Excuse me. All right. We are looking at exhibit 228. All right. Describe what's in this picture, please.
That is just a more close-up picture of the Apple iPhone recovered from the leaves.
And do I see something on the screen of that phone?
Yes, sir. It's standing water, believed to be from the moisture from the night before.
And that screen, is that facing up or facing down?
The screen is facing up.
All right, I'll show you exhibit 235. All right. And what's in this picture?
It's just the opposite angle on the other side of the phone, more of a close-up of the iPhone.
You can see those water droplets on the phone.
Yes, sir.
All right. And I see some sort of line on top of the phone. Can you tell what that is?
Appears to be some sort of plant or
Okay. And finally, 236. What is in this picture?
again, more of a close-up from the top of the phone looking down.
Okay. All right, and this is Exhibit 233. All right, what is in it? Describe this picture.
So the reason behind this is to obviously identify the location of where the device was. I had walked out to Moselle Road, gotten to the center of the roadway, and taken a picture of the trees in the field directly on the opposite side of the road of where the phone was found.
Okay. All right, and this is Exhibit 232. Describe this picture, please.
This is me standing in the same location as the previous picture. This is me just turning right towards the residence to show the pitch in the road as well as the start or the break of the field off to the left.
So you're standing basically across the road from where Maggie's phone was found, correct?
That is correct. It would be directly to my right in this picture.
And facing down that road, what's that way?
That's back towards the residence and the kennels.
And whose vehicle? Do you recall whose vehicle is in that picture?
That was Captain Ryan Niels.
Okay. Finally, Exhibit 229. And what's this picture?
That is a close-up of the back of the picture, or back of the iPhone. That's Special Agent Katie McAllister that has possession of it. At that point in time, we had put it in airplane mode and sealed it into a evidence bag.
Now, you did not physically pick the phone up, correct?
I never once touched the phone, no, sir.
You observed it being picked up, correct?
I did, yes, sir.
And, all right. And did you have any further to do with Maggie's phone after it was collected?
I was provided the extraction once that was completed.
Okay.
But yes, nothing further with the actual device.
Okay. And that was from Lieutenant Dove?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go forward to the day of June 10th, which was 2 days after you found Maggie's phone. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. And did you have reason to respond back out to Moselle on that day?
It was not Moselle, but I believe it was John Marvin's hunting property.
Okay. All right. You responded to John Marvin's hunting property, and why did you go there on that day, June 10th?
I was requested to extract cellular phones from Alex Murdaugh, Randy Murdaugh, John Marvin Murdaugh, and Buster Murdaugh, while they're all being questioned by SLED agents.
All right. To your knowledge, did all those individuals provide consent for that
Yes, sir, they
search?
did, as well as their passcodes.
Okay. All right. So how many phones did you download again? I'm sorry.
During that time frame, I had extracted 3 total phones. There towards the end, once the interviews were being concluded, a phone call was made to multiple family members explaining Randolph's condition, and they all had to leave and go back into Alameda.
Okay.
I was only able to extract 3 phones at that time.
And whose phones were that?
It would have been
Three?
Alex, Randy's, and Buster Murdaugh's phone.
All right. And just generally speaking, why did you download? Why were you needed to download his phones on that day? What was the purpose?
I was tasked by multiple SLED agents to assist them while they were conducting all their interviews to extract the contents of their phone to see if there might be any evidence of the murders in any of their phones.
And was it unusual for SLED in this area to request your assistance with some cell phone evidence?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. All right. So you downloaded those 3 phones. This jury has heard testimony about different types of extractions. What type of extractions did you do on June 10th with, let's focus on Alex's phone. What type of extraction did you do?
The initial extraction was an advanced logical that I had done there on scene at the hunting property.
How long do you recall approximately that logical extraction took?
Advanced logical was basically just a surface area of the phone, identifying the call logs, incoming and outgoing phone calls, text messages, any emails. General location information, you won't always get a whole lot of location information, but ideally to get a pretty good idea as to what's happening on that phone during that time frame.
And just time-wise, I know every phone's different, but do you recall approximately how long it took to download Alex's phone?
I would say between 30 minutes and an hour. None of the phones took any longer than an hour to conduct an advanced logical. Full file system takes much longer.
So between the 3 phones you successfully downloaded today, it took you between, in total, an hour and a half to 3 hours approximately, you would say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This jury's heard about full file system and physical extractions before. You have that capability, correct?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. But you did not perform that on those 3 phones on June 10th, correct?
That is correct.
And just again, generally speaking, knowing every phone's different, how much longer does a physical extraction take than a logical extraction?
It depends on the size of the phone. Obviously, phones these days are getting much larger. Depending on the size of those phones, depending on how long a full file system extraction would actually take. It could be hours, it could be days. It just kind of depends.
Okay. And did you feel like you had hours and hours and days to download those phones?
No, sir, I did not.
Because what did you do after you were done extracting them?
I supplied each of their phones back to them, obviously because of the issues dealing with Mr. Randolph at that time.
And you felt some pressure because of the health issues of Mr. Randolph to return their phones to him so they could take care of family business?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. All right. And so you said a minute ago, so all you removed from these phones was that surface layer of information, correct? Is that what you?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that surface information includes text and call logs, pictures and videos and that sort of thing, correct?
Yes, sir, it does.
And you said sometimes you get some location data, but not always, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
All right. Now, in relation to Alex's phone, was there a concern about his status as an attorney on that?
Yes, sir, there was.
All right. And that phone could potentially contain privileged information, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. So you did the raw download, logical download, and did you initially look at anything on Alex's phone on June 10th?
I did not. I was, once the extraction was completed, I obtained the UFDX file, which is the raw file for a Celebrite file. I then transferred that electronically over to Sergeant Paul McManigal with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, who also serves in the United States Secret Service Task Force, the Cyber Crime Task Force. I also did that with Randy Murdaugh's phone as well. So I sent him 2 of the UFDX raw files from Celebrite for him to dump into what's called Physical Analyzer to extract the data. At that time, a Tain attorney was assigned from the Ninth Circuit Solicitor's Office. She had met with Sergeant McManigal and gone over all of the attorney-client privilege information, and I was provided a working copy of Alex Murdaugh's phone from Paul McManigal a few days after that.
Okay. But just so it's clear, you said she was from the Ninth Circuit?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And that's a totally separate office from your circuit, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Once you received this redacted logical phone extraction from Sergeant McManigal, what did you do next?
I opened it in what's called Celebrite Reader, which is an executable file that allows you to go in and view the contents of the phone. It's essentially a dashboard that allows you to maneuver around the device itself in a more readable format and identify incoming, outgoing calls, read text messages, any type of emails, photographs, videos, or anything that might be in that person's camera roll.
And in the course of your assistance to this investigation, did you acquire any other records to assist you in looking through these phones?
Yes, sir, I did.
What did you acquire?
I was supplied with all of the call detail records from Verizon for all of the parties that we had obtained information on or obtained a search warrant on to identify ideally location information. What I like to do in my cases, if we have a phone extraction as well as phone records, I like to compare the two and identify any discrepancies or any issues that might occur. But the call detail records allow you to obtain location information if you don't get it from the Celebrite extraction.
Okay. And so you obtained via search warrant or assisted obtaining via search warrant cell records for Mr. Alex Murdaugh and some other individuals, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And those records have been entered into evidence as 268, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
All right. And you just testified that you took those cell phone records, which, to remind a jury, that's information that's stored by who?
By Verizon, in this case Verizon, but yes.
By the cell company, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you compared it to the information you found on these phones, correct?
I did, yes, sir.
And specifically, with Alex's phone, what did you discover when you're comparing these phone records to the phone itself, the call log?
Once I started, I essentially built a digital timeline of all forms of digital evidence that we had during that time frame, and it was kind of a working copy. During that time frame, I compared the call logs from the extraction or from the actual device to the phone logs that I saw in the call detail records provided from Verizon. On the date in question on June 7th, I only saw 2 FaceTime calls on the phone extraction, and I saw a series of around 73
Someone in
phone
chat
calls
asks
on the
a
Verizon
very good
call
legal
detail record.
question. If they had gotten divorced,
What
would
did that
spousal
tell you
privilege be
when you saw
broken?
that?
Depends on your jurisdiction, and I don't know what the answer is in South
It could be a
Carolina.
multitude of things.
But some
They were either
jurisdictions
removed by the
say
user
spousal
or
privilege
the one
ceases to
responsible
exist
for
after
using the
divorce, and
device.
some do not.
It could have overlapped from the call log
So your
history.
mileage will vary.
It could have been a series of things, but I just wanted to make sure that I identified the phone numbers that were in communication during that time frame, and the lack of that information on the actual
And
phone.
you just said it could have overlapped in that. What does that mean?
Over time, your call log obviously gets, historically, just kind of removes itself from the call log history on your actual device. It's nearly impossible, or actually I know of no way to delete any phone calls that you might have made that had processed through the network, or in this case, Verizon.
So there's no way for a user to delete records from Verizon, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
But, you know, in your investigation of his phone, of Alex's phone, I mean, is that what happened? Did his call log just simply overlap? Were you able to determine that?
I was not able to determine it because it was an advanced logical, so I wasn't able to recover any deleted items during that time frame.
So you didn't recover any deleted artifacts of the phone call?
That is
what you
correct.
said.
No, sir, I did
When I
not.
say deleted artifacts, what does that mean?
Anything that was manually deleted from the device itself.
All right. And there's sometimes a trace left in memory when something is deleted, correct?
Yes, sir, that is
But a
correct.
logical extraction is not going to find that, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. But did you, in your review of the call logs, did you discover whether sometime prior to the June 7th, that there were still calls in those logs?
Yes, sir, there was.
All right. And so is this a case where simply the calls just simply overlapped and the oldest went out as the new calls were made?
It's possible.
Well, if there's a gap, you just testified there were phone calls.
Your Honor,
Well, it's about time. You found the leading objection, huh? Did you have to
just
go
testified
through the
that
rules
there
of
were phone
evidence
calls
and
from prior to June 7th,
like, I know it's
still
something.
remaining on that phone?
FaceTime calls, yes, sir.
Okay.
On the call log on the phone extraction. The report that I was provided, because it was a working copy, was from June 1st to June 10th.
Okay. All right. But there were FaceTime calls prior to that, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And when a user accesses just the phone itself and they look at a call log, will that display both calls made over Verizon? It will display calls made over the Verizon network, the call log?
Yes, sir.
You don't want to
Anything that
object
connected
leading
to the
anymore?
network.
All right.
You
And
had
will
your one.
display FaceTime calls as well?
It would, yes, sir.
And you found FaceTime calls from prior to June 7th, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And, but as far as you could tell, as far as calls themselves, when did you start seeing call records start?
Right around the morning, late morning, early afternoon of June 8th, 2021.
Okay. All right. And is there, other than this overlapping situation, is there any other way that you're aware of that could have removed that gap in phone call logs?
If the user went in and manually removed it themselves?
But there's no other automatic process other than what we've already discussed.
No, sir.
And did you discuss with Sergeant McManigal whether his process in redacting certain things, did that process remove any call logs from that download?
Yes, sir, I did review with Sergeant McManigal, and obviously we had discussed the results that were provided to me, and we both agreed on the same opinion.
All right. And that Sergeant McManigal did not remove those records, correct?
That is correct.
For this witness.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Someone wake up defense counsel. Let's see what they got.
understand you, and it's sort of an alien concept to me, solicitor's office going to murder scenes. You go to a bunch of murder scenes?
Yes, sir. Among my other duties, I am involved with the ATF. I'm a task force officer with the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms out of Charleston. So I do some proactive roles there, as well as reactive roles in investigating crimes that will ultimately be my case anyways and come into a courtroom.
If they arrest somebody.
If they arrest somebody, in some cases when no arrests are made, yes, sir.
When they're what?
In some cases when no arrests are made, I would still arrive or respond to the crime scene.
And you took Solicitor Duffy Stone with you, the chief prosecutor for the circuit, right?
We rode in separate vehicles, but yes, he was along with me, yes.
And I think I saw somewhere in the evidence, he actually took photographs that morning, did he not?
Yes, sir, he did.
Is that usual? That the solicitor go around doing evidentiary photos?
Not at all. With the way his mind works, he goes in and he thinks of every idea possible of what could possibly be an issue later on down the road if he prosecutes a case, and he wants to make sure that's all documented in his own book.
And so if he takes a picture and wants to use it in the prosecution, does he introduce it, authenticate it, and take the stand, authenticate it, and then come back down? Or he ask himself questions? How does
No,
that
sir,
work?
he does not.
Let me move on to something a little more productive. You went to a briefing that morning, you said, when you got there.
Yes, sir, I did at
And
Sled Country.
who was the briefing by?
There were probably 30, 40 plus investigators, officers, but multiple, essentially SLED, Colleton County Sheriff's Office, a few Walterboro Police Department, I believe, and a few from my office.
I guess when I think of a briefing, I think of someone standing in front of the room and saying, here's what we got. Was there one person speaking?
There were multiple people speaking, but that was the whole idea, was to get a better grasp as to what had occurred the night before.
But I guess, so who spoke?
Multiple agents, multiple responding officers from the Sheriff's Office. I don't recall exactly who spoke.
How long did the briefing take?
Approximately 45 minutes, if I had to guess.
And you have no specific memory of any specific person saying any specific thing?
There were multiple people speaking, going over the,
So the answer is no.
I do not recall exact people's names and exactly what they said, no, sir.
Do you recall any one person that spoke?
I know Captain Ryan Neal spoke, Special Agent David Owen spoke. I believe Captain Jason Chapman with the Colleton County Sheriff's Office spoke. There was a multitude of people talking about different things that they had seen the night before or the morning of.
Had they indicated to you, any one of those people, that they had a suspect, that they were focused on any particular person?
No, sir.
Did they have an explanation for anything? I mean, at that point, was there some theory about what happened?
At that point in time, we were trying to identify all the physical pieces of evidence as well as obtain and preserve all digital pieces of evidence to make sure we had a strong enough case moving
Were
forward.
you aware that the Colleton County Sheriff's Department had issued a statement to the public saying there's nothing to be afraid of, people, this is not something that you should view as a threat?
No, sir, I'm not aware of that media release.
You did not hear anything like that morning. Well, let me ask you this. If you had an active shooter at large, would police take any proactive steps? Would they put up roadblocks, or would they put out a statement, look, we've got two people brutally murdered, and we don't know who did it, so keep your doors locked. Be careful about if you see somebody in the woods or walking along the road. I mean, you see these, unfortunately, much too often these days. But
what's the question now?
Object. Ms. Harpilly seems to be testifying. Are we going to
Yeah, I lost the question long ago there, Counselor.
Not you. Did you see any evidence of that or hear any evidence of that morning?
What?
Not that I
Evidence of
recall,
what? What are we talking about?
Not that I recall means.
I don't remember. It wasn't focused on
What
what
does I don't
was on
recall
media.
mean? That's
But
great,
did
Dick,
you
to
see
ask
any
that
roadblocks?
question. That's good.
No, sir, I did not.
Did you see anybody searching fields or the woods around the place?
There were multiple tasks that were provided to each investigator during the briefing, and multiple people went out and did their own thing of whatever they were tasked with.
Do you remember what those tasks were?
Following up with potential witnesses.
Right, but I'm talking about, did you see anybody going through the woods armed looking for a person or persons?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. You didn't see any roadblocks, you didn't see any active search for a suspect in the sense of somebody was armed, well, they knew at that point there were spent shotgun shells and spent blackout
What are you
Jason,
talking
right?
about?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So somebody, either two people or one person with two guns, was at large at that point as far as y'all were concerned.
Yes, sir. I mean, ideally.
Okay.
I mean, are you under the
Any of those
impression
agents
that
indicate
in every murder
during
where
your
they
briefing
don't
they
have a
felt
suspect
there
right
was
away,
somebody at
they
large
throw
that
up
was a danger to the
roadblocks
community?
as
Did you hear
standard
any of that?
practice? What are you talking
Don't
about?
believe so.
Okay. So, let me find the critical element here. So, when you got there the next morning, there were no bodies, there was no physical evidence there. It was after all that had been removed.
All the bodies have been removed. All of the trash from the crime scene agents were stacked up. You could see some blood stains in the ground, and as well as some body matter over towards the dog kennels.
And I'm not going to belabor this and put these pictures up, but you had a drone up, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you ever go up to the residence?
I did not go all the way to the residence. No, sir.
Okay, and I don't see any pictures taken from the kennels that you took or under your direction up towards the residence. Are there any?
From the kennels looking back towards the residence?
I mean, but looking from the murder scene back up towards the residence.
Yes, sir, I did take those photographs.
That was during the day, not the night, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, so you don't know what somebody from the house could see at night looking down towards the kennel?
No, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was clear that you weren't testifying somebody up at the house at night would have an unobstructed view of where the bodies were found or the front of the kennels. You're not testifying to that, are you?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about the phone. I thought I had the exhibit number of the phone down. You don't know it off the top of your head, do you? Anybody?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, up there. Okay.
Not sure what
It's
exhibit
on.
number it is.
I think it's 204, which I would find in that box. While he's looking for that, if you continue to look for that, I'd appreciate it. Let me ask you some questions. You indicated the distance from the shoulder to the road, shoulder of the road to the phone was about 15 to 20 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you took a number, did you take those pictures of the phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
Was there any other person there taking pictures other than you?
I was the only one with a camera, so I took the photographs.
Okay. And were you there the entire time until the phone was removed?
Yes, sir, I was. I stayed right next to the phone until Special Agent Jeff Croft and Special Agent Katie McAllister arrived on scene. They took possession of the cellular phone and placed it into an evidence bag.
Okay. And during that period of time, did any sort of forensic team come up and measure how far the phone was from the shoulder of the road?
No, sir, they did not.
Did anyone attempt to come up with a specific location for that phone in terms of measurements, a forensic assessment of where that phone was?
No, sir.
And what are those exhibits that were just introduced? Yes. So, for the record, the state's exhibit number 204. It looks like the case and the phone are separated. So this is the actual phone, is that correct?
Based off of this case, I remember seeing a camo and an orange label case.
If somebody's written on this, that's not you.
No, sir, it's
Because you
not.
never touched the phone.
I did not, no, sir.
All right. And this is a SIM card. What is a SIM card?
It's stored within the device. It's a secondary form of storage for a cellular device.
And so if you anything you do on the device is stored on the SIM card?
Not necessarily, no, sir.
What's stored on here?
It depends on the network, depending on the provider that you utilize. Different providers offer different resources through your SIM card, but
Did you ever examine the SIM card?
I never examined anything on that phone, no, sir.
You did a download, but you didn't examine.
Not on Maggie's.
Oh, you didn't do Maggie's phone?
That's
stand
correct, yes,
corrected. Okay, but somebody could look at the SIM card and get perhaps information that's not on the phone?
Yeah, in some scenarios, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to try to figure out by looking at these pictures while I hold this, I'll bring this phone back in just a minute, is
Thank God for your chat during this kind of questioning.
I want to,
Enjoying that.
okay, how do I get that so we can see it?
Yeah, it's been a lot like this. In fact, it's been mostly like this pretty much the entire time. But we're committed
Well, let me get just these.
for reasons. So
So that is exhibit number, sorry. 228. 228. How about I push that again? And that's what you saw when you came on the phone, correct?
Yes, sir, that is.
And I think we see, and I think he pointed it out a little while ago, there's pieces of straw and other things around it, right?
Yes, sir.
So you would agree with me, if someone had carefully walked over and placed this phone, there wouldn't be anything above it, because everything that straw would be under it, correct?
It's possible, yes, sir.
And in addition to that, did you...
yeah, anytime you want to pop in on commentating, you're more than welcome to. By the way, because I don't really have anything intelligent to say because it's boring as
area around it,
shit.
their footprints?
Yeah.
No, sir. I mean, it was
All right, I just didn't want to
every
walk
tree,
over
every
the
wooden,
riveting
lot
Matlock
of
moment that
leaves,
might
so
occur at
we
any
could not see
time.
any foot impressions.
No, I think we're good. I think we're
A lot of
safe.
leaves.
Yes, sir.
And so, is this sitting, I mean, when it's sitting there with the straw over it, is it sitting flat on the ground? Is it tilted? Is it, what do you remember? Or if you don't?
There was a slight tilt, probably centimeters, nothing major, nothing out of the ordinary around the phone, no holes, no pushed up leaves or anything like that.
So you couldn't, I mean,
This dude just went metric with centimeters. You know,
Oh,
he's on a
good.
federal task force.
let's look at,
Please tell me how many centimeters the phone was relative to something else, because that totally is going to make the case somehow.
let's put this one on there.
It's true. It was 12 centimeters and not 14 centimeters. Yes, it's true. Oh my God, the whole case has been blown wide open.
Okay, so, again, that's another picture taken by you of the same phone in the same location, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And it's heavily wooded in that area, correct?
Right on the edge, yes, sir.
And it's almost a thicket.
Where the
you
trees
found
are,
it,
it's
right?
wooded, yes.
There are bushes around it?
No bushes.
Trees
there are a
are
lot of
wooded.
Trees.
That is
And
true.
underbrush.
and underbrush.
And they grow. I got that from earlier
So-
testimony.
And
too.
they grow.
Nobody actually took measurements of where this was found. No one actually
This dude does lift, though,
from the
I think.
road, nor did they measure. I mean, there's no way to figure out exactly, if you had to go back today and find the spot, could you find it? The exact spot?
Within a couple of feet, yes, sir, I probably could, based off.
Were you able to see a
photographs
couple of
that were
centimeters?
taken.
All I could see were
Couldn't
trees.
give us the exact
All I
spot,
could see were trees.
I
right?
couldn't give you an exact step from the actual device to where Moselle Road was.
Okay, this is exhibit number 232. And that's a vehicle on the same side of the road as where the phone was found, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And so that car window that we see in this photo, the driver's side,
And isn't it true that car windows are typically clear and you can see through them? And usually there's like a
the
windshield.
driver's side window would be 15 to 20 feet from
Maybe
where
he's
that
going to say
phone was,
Murdaugh had a
correct?
rotator cuff
I would
injury.
add a
Can't
few
throw
more
a phone
feet
more
just
than
because the
19 feet.
roadway,
If this was 19 feet
sure,
plus
yeah,
1
that-
centimeter,
Okay.
he's in
Okay.
a
So
Yeah, maybe that's where we're going.
25 to 30 feet? Fair?
That would be fair, yes, sir.
But nobody measured it, so we don't.
Girl Scout, I'm all happy for new emojis. If you have some designs you would like, you can always submit them to me through Twitter or
Yes, sir.
Discord or whatever. And if there's a cool emoji, I'm happy to add it to the list.
On the right lane of the road, yes.
I mean, it'd be on the right, but here it's improperly parked, correct?
Sure.
I mean, the driver's window is, I mean, if there's a car coming the other way, they'd head on, would they not?
That is, yes.
Okay, that's the point.
You
I'm
would be
making.
operating the vehicle on the right side of the road, or left in that image.
Okay, so if someone were driving towards Alameda on this road, and they wanted to get rid of that phone, they would either have
What
to
if
throw
they're
it
driving a right-hand drive
40
car?
on the driver's
Dun,
side,
dun, dun.
this car has, and throw it out, correct?
It's a series of things that could have happened, the reasons why that phone got there, but it's possible.
Well, just assume with me for a second that they want to get rid of that phone by throwing it out the window. They could either throw it from their lane of traffic if they're going towards Alameda, or they can pull over like that and throw it out. It'd be easier, when I say easier, it'd be a much tougher toss that far in from if they never left their lane of traffic, correct?
Really?
Guess it depends
Seriously?
on who's throwing it.
Yeah,
This is a
yeah.
multitude of things.
Seriously?
It'd be me, and I don't throw
The
very
tougher toss defense.
Well, I do, so I could 100% make that throw.
You could throw it from,
Oh,
okay,
he
so
just
we
decked
didn't
it.
even have
Nice.
to change lanes, you just throw it out the window.
I could
Yes,
do
sir,
it.
100%.
Lol. I
And you
know.
would,
But sir, you
throw it
lift,
overhand
correct?
or underhand?
I'd throw it sideways, flick it.
Sideways, okay.
Just fling it.
Do you use steroids? Is that why you can do it?
Okay.
How do I get jacked
So-
like you?
There's no way to tell, we don't know if somebody threw it out. Out of the driver's side window. Are you throwing it with your left hand or right hand, out the driver's side window? I mean, you said you could.
Well, it would
I
depend a
would throw it
lot
with
if
my
you're
left hand
left-handed
from the
or
driver's
right-handed,
side.
I
It
would
easily
think.
Land it to where it actually was found and located.
I would think that would be the more dominant aspect rather than if it's the
Still
driver's side
right-handed
or
or
not.
left-handed?
I'm right-handed, yes, sir.
Would you throw out the driver's side window with your left hand or right hand? I don't know. Am I left-handed or right-handed?
Okay, now, let me ask you this. When you found it, you wanted to put it in, or somebody with you wanted to put it in airplane mode, right?
Yes, sir, I wanted it to be placed in airplane mode to preserve its contents.
Because in airplane mode, less chance of any data being overridden, right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Now, that doesn't prevent all data from being overridden, but most data, correct?
A lot,
And maybe he threw it out of the
99%, I
road,
would say,
and then maybe
prevent
Squirrel
any issue with
moved
the
it further.
Does it prevent GPS data from being overridden?
From another device,
No. I mean, just.
internally just
Yes.
automatically deleting
Internally?
itself?
Yes.
I've never seen that happen.
Okay. But you don't know.
But what if it did, though?
Presumably, no.
So you needed to put it in airplane mode to prevent anything from being overridden, right?
Any outside tampering from another device that had access to its iCloud
And
information?
you told the agents with you, I want to put it in airplane mode, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And to do that, you have to be able to.
Dick
open
seems to be
the-
arguing that
No, sir, you
it
know.
couldn't have been thrown from a car
Not
to
on
where
my
it
phone,
was
sir.
because it was in the opposite lane of travel and it would just be way too hard
Well, but
for someone to throw it
somebody did, what did you get the
across
passcode for? Because
a
somebody called.
2-lane road
We did not get the passcode at that point.
Across the
No one
entire
knew about the
lane
phone, so there's no reason to ask
and
for the
into the
passcode.
shoulder, like 15 feet away from the shoulder. That is just an inconceivable
Later
distance
on,
for
we
someone to
received the
throw
passcode,
a
but not
phone.
At that point.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I was not present. I did not analyze the device, so
Was it at the scene or was it somewhere else?
I do not recall. I was not there.
And even if that were true, what does it matter? I mean, the phone is where it's at. It got there somehow.
Told you that Alex Murdaugh,
So presumably someone placed it there or threw it there from somewhere.
No, sir, no one told me that.
Now, if someone had the passcode, they could go in that phone and eliminate, delete text messages, phone calls, just about any piece of data that's captured there, correct? Even apps, you can delete those, correct?
They could have, but once the full file system extraction was done by Lieutenant Britt Dove,
No, you misunderstand my question, I'm sorry. If you had that phone, and obviously Maggie Murdaugh had been murdered, somebody threw it on the side of the road, and during that period of time after her murder, before it was thrown on the side of the road, if you had the passcode, right?
Yes, sir.
Open it. Without the passcode, typically you can't open it, correct?
No, sir.
You agree with me?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. So if you had that passcode, you could open it, delete photos, delete phone messages, delete text, delete whatever you want, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you found that phone, it was locked?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. And was there any evidence that you saw that anything had been deleted from that phone in any of your, after your download, extraction?
Again, I did not download or extract the contents of the device. The only thing that I saw was the home screen and made sure that the airplane mode was applied at that point, and then it was placed into an evidence bag. We never got past that lock screen or home screen that allows us to turn on airplane mode. Obviously, the device was on because we were able to locate it through Find My iPhone, and the battery level was significantly low.
Was significantly low?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Beg the court's indulgence.
Wow, illuminating. I'm really glad we sat through that long exchange.
Anything further?
We talked about the call logs, and so you downloaded Alex's phone on June 10th, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
3 days after the murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
Not responsive to my cross-examination. I never mentioned Alex's phone, not once.
Response?
I'll proceed, Your Honor.
We actually objected to scope of redirect. I didn't know that they had it in them.
After you were involved in this investigation, you're informed by Solicitor Stone. You were informed by the Solicitor Stone to stop, correct?
Yes, sir, I was.
And you recall approximately when Solicitor Stone.
Objection, Your Honor, again, not in response to a matter raised by me on cross.
Sustain the objection.
Whoa. Someone gave him the advanced of evidence book. Or you've turned to a further page. They've been allowing just all the scope ever, man. I didn't know that they found that page.
Correct?
Yes, sir, he did.
Leading.
Did you notice any vandalism?
No, sir, not at all.
Did you notice, were you informed or did you notice anything missing?
Objection, Your Honor. I didn't know what was missing.
Maybe the witness knows.
Do you remember what you forgot, sir?
I knew Maggie's phone was missing, and that's it.
Okay. But you noticed any vandalism or anything?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. All right. And when it comes to Maggie's phone, at least her model, are you aware whether that can be placed in airplane mode without the unlock code being entered while the phone is locked?
You can place that phone in airplane mode while it's locked, yes.
Okay. So you don't need a code to just simply put it in airplane mode, correct?
No, sir.
All right. And did anybody manipulate any data on that phone in your presence?
No, sir, not at all.
You don't need an airplane to put it in airplane mode, do you?
But they did have an airplane hangar. So.
Okay. That's far from state.
I don't know where I was going with that, but
I like it, though. I don't know if there was an airplane hanging in it, though.
Take a 10-minute break, ladies and gentlemen. Please do not discuss the case.
all right, let's turn this off for 10 minutes and talk a little bit about you, sir. So let's first of all hide that and then push this button. And why don't you introduce yourself to my channel? Who are you?
So my name is Steve, and my channel is Southern Law, and I look at some of these cases and talk about some of them. I've been watching this one, some I haven't talked about it. I'm still not exactly sure what's going on here, or I mean, I certainly thought coming into this case the guy's guilty, but I don't know if I've missed the really conclusive evidence. Didn't they maybe put some decent stuff on that his voice and the thing and stuff, but some of the other stuff, it seemed like, where are we going with this?
That's been the overall thrust. The best witness was Rogan from yesterday, who was able to authenticate Alex's voice on the video that was recorded at the kennels, which contradicts Alex's story of the alibi. Because my understanding is Alex says, I wasn't at the kennel that night. And, well, yes, you totally were, because this guy who's known you for like 20 years and grew up around you and knows everyone in your family extensively was able to authenticate your voice. And so that's the best evidence we have so far. Otherwise, it's been a whole lot of tee up and not much payoff. Laborious going through records and cell phone records. And do I really need to know every time the device was turned on and turned off and exactly how long it took to rotate the phone? Apparently, I do need to know this information. I'm not sure why. That's been the overall thrust. It's been a lot of stuff that I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know why this is connected to anything.
Well, and the other thing, I was watching a little bit earlier with this testimony about the financial crimes, because it's not an element to the crime, but nevertheless, it's important to understand, why would this guy do this? Like, what's the motive? And if you bring the financial crime stuff in, was there a life insurance policy? I mean, what is the connection? And I think you said the judge has a rule on it yet. I don't know if they showed why that would be a motive for him.
Yeah, I don't think there's a life insurance policy or anything like that on any of them. The motive as presented by the state seems to basically be, it doesn't quite make sense that, that his house of cards for his financial dealings were becoming unraveled. And that's when the testimony we heard from the hearing that still has no resolution, basically, is that the scheme was becoming increasingly exposed. And on the day of the murder, that the office manager confronted, but not necessarily for the first time, about this one check that seemed to really blow the whole thing apart. This check for like $800,000 or whatever it was, that was missing funds. The law firm's like, where is our $800,000? It seems to be the thing that sort of caught everyone's attention. Although even then they didn't think it was theft. The firm didn't think it was theft at that time. They thought it was him trying to hide money to prevent liability relating to this boat thing. So even at that point, they thought there was a more innocent explanation. But it seems to be that, and it also seems to be speculated that, well, they were in financial trouble, that their homes had been sold recently, that the finances were not going good. And also later that week, that Alex Murdaugh was going to be part of a hearing relating to this boat accident, but I don't really think that's either here nor there, because it's just kind of like one thing, and it wasn't like he just learned that he was going to be sued or something. I don't think that would have done it. But the idea is that, I don't know, we have no evidence of this, but maybe he was confronted by his family or something, or he's a family annihilator or something. Because it's just like he was using the murders to cover up the boating accident liability financial fraud stuff, ? And it's a little like, doesn't quite make sense.
No, it doesn't. Of course, his prior housekeeper thing, that makes him look suspicious. But then didn't he get himself shot, in theory, maybe so his son would be able to recover some money or something? It's just all very, really bizarre.
Yeah, he had a $2 million policy, or I think it was 2, maybe it was 10. It might have been $10 million policy, now that I'm saying it out loud. He had a substantial policy on himself and hired a hitman to kill himself, which obviously didn't succeed. It's because we're here talking about it. So, yeah. But it's if you're trying to prove the financial frauds, I think you're there. From the hearing, we've got some pretty good evidence of the financial frauds and checks receipts and all kinds of stuff. We've got paper trail, as one would expect in a financial fraud case. So if we're trying to prove the financial frauds, okay. But then it's like, okay, how does this tie to this? Is where this is falling apart. And I think the defense made the wrong arguments in the hearing today, because they were basically trying to attack the clear and substantial evidence of the financial frauds, which is a loser. Much better is, how does the nexus tie? How does one crime relate to another? And there's just kind of some question marks. But the defense was making the wrong arguments, so I think the judge is inclined to allow it right now, but we haven't heard, so we'll see.
So on the firearms, if I've got this right, and I didn't hear all of this, they were trying to connect this with spent shell casings at the scene with the shell casings found at other areas, because I guess then they didn't recover a rifle that they could forensically.
They did not recover a rifle, no. And I don't think they even recovered the shotgun, at least, because I'm not sure because any of the I think they said none of the guns they introduced matched. So I'm not even sure they have the shotgun either. Wow. We have not heard testimony yet on the whole matching the casing thing. That was a preliminary hearing as to the scope of expertise. So we haven't actually heard that. But yes, it appears that we're going to hear in the case that they believe that they can match spent casings that were found at the murder scene from spent casings at the shooting range, which is their own personal private shooting range on their own personal property. Ergo, it was Murdaugh's gun that did the murders. Ergo, it was Murdaugh that did the murders. So that seems to be that, but we haven't really, strictly speaking, heard that evidence yet. So it leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of it with the guy talking about, well, there's federal head stamp on the ground, and federal, like I think I heard you say that, that's common. I mean, that doesn't show.
Federal's pretty common.
Yeah.
Federal. Oh, it's a federal 12 gauge. Ooh, tell me another tale.
Yeah, it must be you then. Yeah. And
I've shot federal 12 gauge many times. it's like I was like, that's the stuff you buy in Walmart. Winchester. Yeah. Oh, that's also stuff you buy in the Walmart. Oh, okay. So basically the most common shooting ammo known to man. That's great. Yeah, we've also learned that they are not really great about the firearm safety and storage over there at the Murdaugh property, that Paul apparently just keeps guns just lying around all over the place, just wherever, unlocked, as locked, doesn't matter, just willy-nilly, just guns are everywhere. We're scattering the guns in the hopes the guns will sprout bullet seeds or something. I don't know, but yeah, but that doesn't quite really make sense that the family firearms were used suggests some sort of planning, or no, it suggests like an attack of opportunity. Like, if it's not Murdaugh who did the murder, then someone else went there presumably for the purpose of doing the murders. But wouldn't they bring their own guns? It's like, why would they depend on the fact that I can take a gun from somewhere and use it? That doesn't quite make sense. I suppose maybe Paul or one of them came with the rifle and somehow they disarmed him and then used that, but that doesn't quite make sense either. So the idea that it's someone else with Murdaugh's gun doesn't seem to quite make sense either. But then again, the state's evidence sucks. They don't have any of the guns. They don't have any of the clothes. They don't have a confession. There's no way I'm staking the confession on the one line of, maybe he said, I did him bad. Yeah. I did him so bad, which could mean so many things. Even if he said I, and I still think he said they.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't do anything for me anyway. So this is a thin circumstantial case. And I think at this point, the state is trying to use motive to basically outrage the jury and convict on the wrong reasons. So, yeah.
So another thing, when that was going on, I heard you talk about guns. So you shot USPSA and IDPA. So I used to be a USPSA open guy, and 3-gun PRS stuff, lots of guns. I mean, I'm from the country, so what do you expect? Well, I've fired, I know, 6 figures of whatever there is out there on the planet to shoot. But it didn't get as interesting as I hoped it would when they were talking about the gun stuff, because it just stayed pretty loose. And I think you're telling me that was a preliminary thing anyway. But still, I thought maybe they would have something more substantial to match up. But I never heard it. But I wasn't able to focus on the case to hear all of it.
We haven't really gone that far yet. And to the extent that the ammo, because they were talking about the head stamps and stuff like that, but they never really did the connecting questions. So I wasn't really quite sure if they were trying to say that the ammo was like the exact same type that was kept at the house. Because I remember them talking about the ammo or the spent shells that were found at the scene. And they said, I remember vague words like Federal and 12 gauge and dry lock. And I remember those vague words. And then I remember them mentioning those same kind of words of ammo that was recovered from the house. But I'm like, wait a second, are you saying that they're 1-to-1? Like, what was the shot size? What was the length? What was are you saying that they're the same? Because they never asked the connecting question. And I'm like, I don't quite know how this is relevant other than there's some similarities, but how similar are they? Shot sizes. I'm like, well, what brand, what gauge, what length, what shot size? That would be helpful. What color of the shell?
And if they shoot a lot out there, which I take it they did, is do dove hunting, and they obviously were shooting their 300 blackouts out there, there could be a lot of different kinds of shell casings on the ground. And even if someone else came to murder these people, you probably can find some kind of shell casing that's, there's probably 5 brands. If they had friends over, they buy whatever they get.
And also they testify that they shot on the property all the time.
Yeah.
So the idea that there's shell casings from this gun on the property, just generally, it's like, because we used to go out shooting all the time, and with the night scopes with the 300 blackouts. So there's a potentially innocent explanation for, even if it is the same gun, that well, of course, because they shot that gun on the property at times unrelated to the murders, and also shot the gun at the shooting range. So even that you can discount completely and just be like, okay, they're just casing from whenever. So it leaves a lot to be desired on the whole thing. Oh, and then also, as Abby noted, they didn't even bother retrieving bullets from the backstop at the range to match the bullets from the backstop to the bullets used in the murder. So that's just great attention to detail. That was nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really trying to tie this together, a bullet used in the murder is certainly used in the murder. If it comes out of the victim and more tight than a shell casing, why wouldn't you want to compare that? That's
just too convenient. I don't know. That's just going on for stuff. So yeah. So so the biggest thing that they've got right now is that it appears that Murdaugh has to explain a thing, right? And also potentially 2 things, because there was this video that was recorded around 7:30 where he's wearing different clothes than he would be recorded in later that night. So he changed his clothes at some point. So maybe that's a thing that needs to be explained. And also the fact that, he's like, I wasn't at the kennels when you totally were at 8:40. So at 7:30 p.m., he's wearing a different outfit than he'll be seen in later. At 8:40 p.m., he's at the kennels, even though he says he wasn't. So Murdaugh has something to explain. Is it doable? Yes, it can be done. But it's a thing that has to be explained. And there's only so many things that you can explain before you're just toast. And so, it's doable, but it's uncomfortable. And that's the best we've got right now is problems in the story.
I thought
which is like attacking the defense's story is not quite the same thing as the prosecution proving its own story. So there's that too.
I thought Rogan sounded pretty credible.
I really liked Rogan. I thought he was incredibly credible. I thought he was very credible. I was mocked yesterday by Peter by saying incredibly credible. So I'll say very credible.
Maybe it's credibly incredible. That would make sense too. So
yeah. So I think, and they're going to try to get this motive stuff in. The motive stuff doesn't really work. I don't know how that's going to play. And there's, they have, and I didn't really buy this opening the door thing. And we've talked about that ad nauseum on my channel already about whether or not the defense's questions opened the door. I didn't really think it did. And even if it did, to the degree, I don't think it did to the degree the prosecution wants to rebut it. But Oh, the judge hasn't yet made a decision, but I think they're inclined to allow it. So I think, that's a big decision to let that stuff in, and it could be a reversal. So I'm cautious.
Yeah, well, especially if, like you say, they don't have a good tie-in for how this relates to the case, then it's just prejudicial stuff about the guy.
Yeah.
If you can't tie it together.
The walls were closing in on the financial stuff, question mark, therefore murder. It's like that his life was falling apart generally. Okay, but the murder, it's a lot of, okay, something.
Back in the game.
And I enjoyed our extensive discussion on how far you can throw a phone out of a car. That was insightful. Just a quick reminder to my channel to check out Southern Law. Does some good content out there. Trying to bring him into the law tube, may you.
If you have trouble sleeping, check out my channel.
There you go.
I've got the cure.
Paul says Columbo says motive is everything. Motive is most decidedly not everything. Strictly speaking, it's not even a thing.
Thank you. You may call your next witness.
State calls Katie McAllister.
Katie McAllister. From SLED. I see you, Katie.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about the court in this trial shall be the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And you take a seat in the witness stand. State your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
Katie McAllister, MCC.
Good afternoon, Agent McAllister.
Hello.
Could you please tell the jury where you work?
I work for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, more commonly known as SLED.
And how long have you worked for SLED?
10 years.
And what is your position there?
I'm a senior special agent in the Low Country Region Investigative Services.
And were you a senior special agent back on June 7th of 2021?
I was just a regular special agent then.
Did you have a chance to respond to Moselle Road in that capacity as a SLED agent?
I did.
Can you tell us when you responded out there?
I was told late on the night of June 7th to be at the office on June 8th. I was given some assignments, and then I responded to the actual property around lunchtime on June the 8th, 2021.
So June the 8th, the day after the murders took place.
Yes.
And what did you do when you got out there?
Myself and Special Agent Croft were almost to the house. There were several people in the roadway. It appeared to be blocked, so we stopped and got out.
Did you, what were those people up to?
There had been a phone located on the side of the road.
Okay. And whose phone was that?
It was Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone.
And can you tell us about your involvement in the collection of Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone?
Yes, so once we got out of the car, I had gloves. Captain Neal retrieved the phone from where it was laying. I was standing right beside him. When
Thank you for the super chat, Marcia.
He handed me the phone with my gloved hands.
That's very
I held
kind
the
of
phone
you.
for Investigator Hightower to take a picture.
I may be able to
of
eat
it.
tomorrow.
The phone call
Yeah.
was Captain Neal receiving the passcode. He asked me to confirm it. I typed it in. We confirmed that it was the right passcode. I locked the phone. At that point, Investigator Hightower asked me to put it in airplane mode, which I did.
And so what was the point of you putting the passcode into that phone?
To confirm that the passcode we were given matched the actual phone that we had.
To confirm that was Maggie Murdaugh's phone?
Yes,
And when you unlocked that phone, did you delete any calls?
I did not.
Did you delete any text messages?
I did not.
Did you alter any data in that phone?
I did not.
You locked that phone back immediately?
Yeah, as soon as it opened, you know, the screen clears to show that that is the right passcode, I immediately locked it back.
And then what happened to the phone as far as you know?
Captain Neal, who was standing right beside me, took the phone back.
All right, let's move on. What else did you do?
So once I arrived on scene, myself along with Special Agent Croft were asked to go up to the main house to do a search of the property, or of the home.
Did you have a search warrant?
There was a search warrant, yes.
Was that search warrant executed?
It was not.
Why not?
At the time of my arrival, multiple family, close friends were at the house. Rather than executing the search warrant and displacing all of those people, we asked for consent and we were given it.
And were a lot of people at that residence at the time?
There were.
You could give us kind of a rough estimate of the amount of people that were there.
I would say maybe 20 or 25 people were in the home.
And you didn't want to have to ask all those people to leave?
Some of them were very upset and we thought it was better to simply ask for consent.
Tell us what you found in the search of the house.
So upon consent, I walked through the residence. I was looking for weapons and ammunition and observant to anything else that may have been of value. I found nothing, and once I came back downstairs to the gun room, Agent Croft had located several items of interest, some weapons and some ammunition. He and I collected those. I completed a property receipt.
Let's go back to your search a little bit. When you walked through the house, were you alone?
I was not.
Who was with you?
I believe it was John Marvin Murdaugh and Lee Cope.
And who were those people?
John Marvin Murdaugh is Alex Murdaugh's brother. Lee Cope is an attorney from their law firm.
And what rooms of the house did you search?
All of them.
And these John Marvin and Lee Cope were with you when you went in every room?
They were.
Did you search any other places?
We searched bathrooms, tubs. There were several attic-type spaces where different holiday decorations were stored. We looked in there, or I looked in there, and we didn't.
I'm with you.
find anything
I'm with you,
about it.
Ellie, and the timetable
Did
is
you look
really
anywhere that
tight.
you thought there
Thank you
could
for your
be
super chat.
a long gun?
Yes.
Did you observe any bloody clothing when you were searching the residence?
I did not.
And you said you were observant?
I was.
You mentioned that.
So I went in
Croft
every
had
room.
collected,
I was
some
observing. I didn't
weapons,
find the bloody clothes. That's
ammunition.
great. That's just brilliant.
Would that be the
The state's case gets
3
better and better with
shotguns,
the absence of every
Mossberg,
piece of
a
evidence.
Browning, and a Benelli Super Eagle, along with a 300 blackout rifle,
Yes.
and then some various ammunition?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you do with those items?
So we gathered them together. I filled out the property receipt. We took them back to the SLED office here in Walterboro, where we met with the crime scene agent, Agent Worley, and I receipted those items to her.
So Agent Worley took custody of those items.
She did.
She looks
Do
like
you
a high-level
recall,
arm wrestler like
at
the
some
last guy.
point speaking or being present at an interview with Buster Murdaugh?
I was.
And was any evidence collected during that interview?
Yes, we asked him for consent to do a buccal swab and also consent to look at his cell phone.
I'm going to show you this case exhibit 217. If you could tell me what that exhibit appears to be.
This appears to be the buccal swab from Richard Alexander Buster Murdaugh Jr., collected June 10th, 2021 at 3:26 p.m.
Now, did you collect this buccal swab?
I did not.
Who collected it?
Lieutenant Charles Gant with SLED.
Okay. Were you present when it was collected?
I was.
How did Lieutenant Gant collect this swab?
A buccal swab is just 2 cotton swabs. He opened them from the packaging, swabbed his mouth, sealed them back up, placed them in the envelope you see there, sealed it, initialed it, and dated it.
And he would have sealed that up so it was not tampered with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I move State's Exhibit 217 into evidence.
No objection.
Admitted without objection.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Wow.
Wow.
Discrimination.
Insightful.
Yes, sir.
What did you get?
So I went to the house. They gave me consent to search. I searched. I asked for
You
DNA.
were
I got
present
DNA.
when
Wow.
the phone, Maggie's phone, was recovered, correct?
Yes, sir, I was.
Matter of fact, that, when we look at one of these pictures, a rubber glove, that's your hand, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And are you aware when you got that call with the passcode that had been gotten by John Marvin? Was John Marvin down there with you when you found the phone?
I don't recall seeing him there, no, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that that passcode came from Alex Murdaugh?
No, sir, I was not aware of that.
And who gave it to you?
Captain Neal.
Okay. Now, you searched the house on the morning of, was it the morning of the 8th?
It would have been the afternoon.
Okay. And you went
So
through
the day
entire
after the
house.
murder.
Yes, sir.
How many bedrooms in that house? Do you know? How many bathrooms in that house?
3 or 4, I don't recall the exact
Okay,
number.
but you went through every one of them.
Yes, sir.
And you looked at the tub, you looked at the showers, right?
Yes, sir.
What were you looking for?
Ammunition, weapons.
Blood?
If it was there, I was observant. We were looking for anything at that point.
Right. So when you look at the drain in a shower, if somebody's recently showered off blood, you would expect to see some trace evidence there, would you not?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that.
Do you know whether
You're
any-
certainly
there are
qualified to
trace
answer
evidence
that.
Forensics people that actually go in and swab those, right?
There are, yes, sir.
Were they there?
No, sir.
Did anyone ever ask them to come that you know of?
Not that I'm aware
Do you
of,
know
no,
whether
sir.
any of those showers or tubs were in any way swabbed or checked for blood or tissue or any DNA, anything that would indicate somebody had washed off evidence of a crime?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay. But you,
Good.
apparently you're the only one to do this, correct?
Yes, sir.
The only person that actually looked at the showers and the tubs, you eyeballed them, right?
I did.
You're the only person who SLED had examined the showers and tubs. And you're telling this jury you saw no evidence of blood, tissue, or anything that would indicate somebody had showered or washed off or bathed to remove evidence of a crime from them. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, sir. There was nothing visible to me.
Great.
And you were the only one asked to do that by SLED?
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir.
So the day after the murder,
Did you search the bedrooms?
I got consent
I
to
did.
search the
Did you
house.
find any clothes?
I looked. I didn't see
anywhere?
any trace evidence of blood in any of the
Shirts,
showers.
pants,
I didn't see any
shoes
bloody
would
clothes.
indicate-
Objection, Your Honor. Could we ask one question at a time, please?
Well, I'm just including a class rather than asking it individually. I apologize. I can do it individually. Take a little longer. Thank you. Any clothes, shoes, any evidence of clothing that would have blood on it or indicated had blood on it or tissue, anything that you saw in any of the bedrooms. How many bedrooms?
Several.
Several. You looked at all of them?
Yes, sir, I did.
Looked under the beds?
I did.
In the closets?
I did.
See any evidence of any clothes that had been involved in any sort of altercation that had left blood or tissue or brains? You see anything like that in any one of those rooms?
No, sir, I didn't find anything like that.
Great. Great. This would have to be the most thorough cleanup job ever. The day after the murder. The day after the murder, there's no trace evidence of any clothing with blood.
Thank you.
There's no trace evidence of blood in the showers.
Redirect.
Number of the state, Your Honor.
What?
Thank you. You've been stepped down.
Didn't she
What?
say she was looking for ammo in the shower in the tub, but they don't have anybody looking for anything else? That's weird. I don't know about the ammo in the tub. chapter of I haven't seen that in forensics as a big place to make sure you check.
So Alex
We're gonna have
Murdaugh had a very tight time frame.
you leave for the day and to return tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to do hearing part 2 now.
11:30
in case you're curious.
will be our start time tomorrow. 11:30. So
I get to
you
sleep
have 2
in.
hours.
Victory.
And tomorrow. Please remember not to discuss the case, to be exposed to any information.
Yeah, I keep
concerning the case.
my ammo in the tub.
And we will
I mean,
see you tomorrow. You'll go
it's
to-
dry lock.
The only way to know for sure.
My God, they sold it to me
We
as
need
dry
an
lock. I'm gonna
experiment
keep it in
phone
that
talking
tub. I shower
similar
with
to
it
how
every
Law and
day.
Lumber did the knife wood testing during the JD trial.
Yeah, of course. So this is just, it is difficult to believe. His time frames are so tight. He's down by the kennel at 8:40. She checks the phone for the last time at like 8:55 or something. He's on the road like 9:06 or something to go to his mom's house, and he has every reason to be there. His dad has just been admitted to the hospital. He's going to die 2 days later. His mom has Alzheimer's, so going to go check on her, make sure she's okay.
With the 404 witnesses.
He gets back within like 20 minutes. He calls 911, and there's no bloody clothes, no bloody shower.
I might have miscalculated by about 30 minutes, so I apologize. The witness is close by. If you'll give me 1 moment, please.
This is difficult to believe. He would have to have. I'm not even sure he can plan it out that well. People try to plan murders, but they usually fuck it up.
Betty's for a few minutes.
Yeah, that's as we say, a lot. It is a lot. It's a tight time window. Earlier that day, he's seen talking to his family in a normal way. There's no apparent indication of anything wrong, even on the tape where he's at the kennel. He's acting in a normal way. So you'd have to believe, I suppose, for this to work, you'd have to believe that he's just a cold-blooded killer psychopath. He had planned this all out to a T. He's able to pretend to just be a completely normal person. He manages to get rid of basically all the evidence against him in a condensed time frame. And then it's a lot. It's a lot. You got any thoughts on the issue?
Well, sitting there listening to that last witness, I'm like, okay, what is she here to show? But I think she was there to show I was the person who went through her house. I didn't find anything. So yeah, as I come in and out of this case, I'm still waiting to get on the train of the cohesive narrative of here's why we say he did it, and the state laying out a case. They've got the burden of proof, and he probably did it. It was my thought before this started, but it's on them to prove it. And this tight time frame is an issue for them, and how are they solving it? I mean, I'm not aware that they have any of this evidence to bring in later, like clothing or blood on him or
they
something.
don't.
Yeah,
they don't have bloody clothing. They don't have the murder weapons. They got a whole lot of nothing, and then their motive even kind of sucks. The best they and he's and what did he do? Blow the brains out of his son and shoot his wife in the back, then drive to go somehow manage to clean up everything, go to his mom's house, and then drive back, and he's making calls, and he remembers to call his wife and son and the friend and things to set up this massive alibi. We did hear some devastating evidence against Alex Murdaugh. Apparently, he called his wife 3 times in a 2-minute period, and also he texted her, "Call me back, babe." This apparently is the devastating evidence that has cracked the case wide open.
Yeah,
for the state.
I saw that, and I'm like, well, okay, so that's what he did. How does that show he's guilty or anything? I mean, it could be just him manipulating the situation to make, staging it a little bit, but there's no evidence of that, right?
No.
Where's the evidence he killed them? Then this stuff matters. It matters if you can show otherwise he killed him as part of his calculated effort, but it seems pretty weak right now.
It seems exceptionally weak. Yeah, they were there that night. He gave them permission to search everything. He wasn't trying to hide everything. He cooperated in the interviews. He's like, take my TNA, search the house, look anywhere you need to. Here's the passcode to the phone. Of course you can download my phone. No problem. Participating in this, like whatever you need. It's like, okay. What? I mean, if it were me, I'd probably be clamming up because I know all too well how easy it is to say something that can be misinterpreted. And we already potentially have that situation. So it's like, I'm not talking to you guys, but this guy's talking to him. And I mean,
And I don't know how many ARs he had. However, if it wasn't there, they never found it. Did they not have somebody or pictures or something to say, well, he used to have 8 ARs and now there's only 7. So we don't have the gun, but we can show one's missing. Maybe it was just an upper. I don't know if they checked any of that stuff, whether he bought an upper from PSA and shot it, took that, But like you say, if it's a condensed time frame, that's a lot of things to hide.
They own 3 AR blackouts. One was stolen a couple years before this. And I think the other one is missing.
Okay.
So
there's a missing gun.
Yeah, there's a missing gun, but so it's not great. Meanwhile, in courthouse, the drama between Seal, Clock, and Chandelier continues. Are you familiar with the drama between Seal, Clock, and Chandelier?
No. What is it?
Yes. Well, because this is basically what we had to look at for most of the preliminary hearings. I've concocted a backstory between these participants. Seal and Clock are in a romantic relationship. Chandelier is the interloper dangling from above, trying to interject himself into the relationship between Seal and Clock. But little does Chandelier recognize that the very act of casting his light helps Seal and Clock understand themselves even better than before. But also, we've seen Seal and Clock occasionally shift position when Chandelier isn't there. So we think that perhaps there's something awry and perhaps they're involved in some sort of conspiracy. And Chandelier might be onto something. With occasional appearances with Molding and Sconce that are also there as witnesses. So this is part of the backstory of my channel. Also, we believe that Chicken is the real murderer. There is a dead chicken that was found at the scene, and we believe it was a murder-suicide committed by Chicken.
Is this the same chicken that was referenced in the Snapchat video?
Apparently, yes.
Okay, so not another chicken that went into a rage after finding out that the Bubba, I think, had assassinated another.
Well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was different. There you go. It was a revenge killing for the death of Chicken by dog. Yeah, that was a different chicken revenge killing. I like it. That works too. So yeah, that it was 2 chickens side by side, one with a shotgun and one with a 300 blackout on a revenge murderous rampage.
Well, sometimes you hear these stories about the dog shot the person who had their rifle loaded behind them while they were going hunting, and so it's not. It could. And of course, we had the staircase case here in North Carolina, where the theory is that the owl killed the woman and not the guy. So a chicken would raise the stakes, and some chickens can fight. And it is the home of the Gamecocks, right? Fighting chickens is literally their mascot. One little piece of evolution, and they realize they can pull this trigger and take out the humans. I mean, tender here.
First, they were satisfied with knives on their talons, but now they're using rifles and shotguns. Yeah. So we've created a whole backstory with these characters. Seal and Clock thought they were meant for each other because they're both around, and they both have hash marks around their circumference, and they both are communicating a message. But Seal has accused Clock of changing. So, yeah. Overheard in the courtroom by sconce. If you'd like to bail out at this point because I'm insane, I understand.
Well, one thing that's gotten me as I watch this case, and I haven't had to set through what you're setting through now, which is them just showing these three things, but they have the thermostat behind the witnesses.
Yes.
And that's my own personal insanity. Is I sometimes try and see, like, what is the temperature? And what if the witness raised the temperature? And I think about that thermostat because the testimony doesn't seem to be moving the case forward. And so I just look at that, which may be a Wi-Fi thermostat as well. It could be controlled by the clerk. I don't know if anybody has to manually change it or not, but it's fascinating. It's right there behind the witness.
It's being manipulated by SLED, just like everything else in this state. What is your perception of SLED as a North Carolina lawyer? Surely you have one.
Yeah, well, at least in these last couple of witnesses, I got to say they're strong people. They're definitely looking like they're working out. Now, in terms of forensic stuff, looking for ammo in the bathtub, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on them. I guess I would say from a sheerly long-term standpoint, I'm just watching them in this case a little bit. I take it though from the chat and from what you're saying that maybe they haven't put this case together as well as people had hoped they would, one way or the other.
SLED has a bit of reputation for fucking things up in various ways. At least that's been my perception of them.
Is the chicken really named Bojangles, or is that just you guys?
No, that's just us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you for the chart on the cell phone activity, by the way. It's helpful. Alien. Thanks.
Stay tuned. Here they
Yes,
come.
The state calls Michael Gunn for the in-camera hearing.
Michael Gunn.
He's got the right name.
There you are, Mr. Gunn.
Left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about the record of this trial shall be the truth and the trial?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Speak loudly. Take a seat in the witness stand. State your whole name. Spell your last name for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Michael Gunn. Last name is Gunn.
Good voice.
Gunn, this is obviously an in-camera hearing to determine the admissibility of some of the testimony. Do you understand?
Nice suit, too.
Right? And so I'm not going to go into all the background and everything.
Damn, he looks
for purposes
fly.
of This hearing, but just very quickly, where do you work?
I'm a principal at Ford's Consulting and also do some lobbying work for the South Carolina Association for Justice.
Okay, and just very quickly, tell us what Ford's Consulting is and what services it provides.
Ford's Consulting, we are a general insurance agency, but also offer financial services such as structured settlements, regular annuities, deferral of attorney's fees, trust. We do lien resolution, back office trust account reconciliation, all sorts of things for plaintiffs primarily and their families.
All right, and then if you could, just very quickly, just for the record, explain what a structure is and how that interfaces with plaintiffs' lawyers.
Sure. So a traditional structured settlement is between the parties, and that normally means between the plaintiff and the defendant or their insurer. And so usually it was set up in the 80s. It was designed to help plaintiffs protect their money and to keep their money. And it can be earned tax-free. Interest grows on that tax-free. And it's a very good tool, especially for minor children, for those who are incapacitated.
Please let me tell you about why our financial products are really, really good. Here's what we do. We help to protect your money. Get a little business here on the side.
Yeah.
You're talking faster than I do, and that says something.
Call me at 1-800-CASH-NOW.
I know you just ran over here, so let's take it down just a notch.
No worries.
All right, good deal. Okay, so take it up from there. If you want.
So essentially, the structured settlement, though, would come primarily, usually, except in very small circumstances, would come from the defendant and/or its insurer to fund the annuity for the client.
Okay. And so the idea is instead of getting a settlement in a lump sum, it's in an annuity, so they get regular payments over the course of the term of that annuity.
That's correct, yes, sir.
So explain to me just very quickly again for the record the concept of constructive receipt and how that affects structures that you may do for a plaintiff's attorney and their clients.
Sure. So constructive receipt by the IRS is deemed when the money arrives in the plaintiff's trust account. That would be considered they have received the funds, and therefore the ability to do a structure has been taken off the table. The only way that you could do a structure after that would be to return the funds to the defendant and or its insurer, and then therefore let the they would have to agree to play ball and redo all the documents, because there's so much language that's included in the documents that specifies this.
All right, so the settlement can't go to the law firm and then to the annuity company. That will ruin the constructive receipt and ruin the tax advantages of that.
It is in very rare cases that we're able to do that. But generally speaking, correct.
All right, so generally your services that you provide are consulting to sort of match up the client with an annuity company, and then that money is going to, in the settlement or whatever it is, verdict is going to go from the defendant or the insurer that's paying whatever that is, that verdict or settlement, directly to that annuity company for the benefit of that client.
That is correct.
Can't go to the law firm, generally.
Generally speaking.
Okay. All right. How long have you been with Forge Consulting doing this work?
It'll be 18 years this summer.
All right. And what's the actual full legal name of the entity that you are part of?
Forge Consulting, LLC.
Okay. Over the course of your involvement with this business, have you gotten to know the defendant, Alex Murdaugh?
I have.
All right. And just very quickly, tell me the capacity in which you got to know him.
It bore from a professional relationship, doing work with trial lawyers, conventions, CLEs, things of that nature, which ultimately turned into a friendship born out of business.
Okay. And when you say friendship, was it a close friendship or more like a business relationship type of friendship?
I would say a business relationship type of friendship, but one that you would text with and call on occasion and things.
Okay. Did you ever do any structures for any clients?
I want to give this guy my money.
Plaintiff's lawyer.
He just comes off as instantly credible. I feel like I'm in good hands.
Around 5.
I'm about to be conned.
Did you ever? What's the last one you remember? At least having some discussion with him about doing a structure.
The last one that
Now
I
he's in
remember having
chat?
discussion
Oh,
with,
cool.
I believe, was the Dion Martin case.
Okay, and tell me about that. Did that ever come to fruition or not?
It did not.
All right, and tell me what you made.
We sent over some quotes. We got some information back from the defendant. He sent us information, a signed option, which I would assume was Mr. Martin's. Sent some information back, and annuities, you have to understand, are priced on a daily market. Sometimes that rate is good for a week or two. I sent several emails back saying, hey, this rate is going to expire. We need to move forward. And ultimately, we ended up closing the case cash because we never got a response.
All right, when you say you sent emails asking for a response, who were you sending those to?
I was sending those to Mr. Murdaugh as well as his paralegal, Annette Griswold.
Okay. And so ultimately got no response, so you just closed the file without any services ultimately being provided by Forge Consulting, LLC?
That is correct, yes, sir.
I'm going to show you very quickly what's been marked.
Nothing like sirens to punctuate the testimony.
Hearing, and specifically direct your attention to the 5th page of this exhibit.
Thank you for the
and
super
just
chat,
simply
Nally.
recognize that. And then you can flip to the next couple.
Appreciate the
pages.
thought. That's very kind of you.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, tell us what that is. Just kind of flip through first.
That's just an annuitized payment stream showing you when the payments will be made.
Okay.
And what the amount is.
And that's kind of the market rate thing you were talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right, and what are the next documents? Just
The next page is a disclosure page where we list all our disclosures, and it appears to had been signed by Dion Martin.
Okay, keep going. That's the only Forge-related documents you see?
Let's see, that's the only Forge-related documents I see, yes, sir.
All right, let me take that back.
Yep.
All right. Put those up on the screen real quick. All right, so that's sort of the annuity schedule, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then this is the disclosure page you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
And that is Forge-generated paperwork typically?
That is correct, yes.
But this particular structure was never done because you never got a response from Elkin?
No, sir.
Or his office, is that correct?
That is correct.
A constant
sirens
state of
constantly in the
emergency.
background.
Yeah.
sirens pass. Are you aware generally of what people call the boat wreck case or the boat case as it relates to the defendant, Alex Murdaugh?
Generally, yes.
All right, and just without going into specific facts, generally what was your understanding of that?
There was a terrible accident that happened somewhere down in the low country involving Mr. Murdaugh's son and several others, and a young girl passed away.
Were you aware that his son had been charged in that particular case?
I was.
And were you aware that Alex Murdaugh had been sued in a civil matter relating to that case?
I believe I was made aware through the news, yes.
Did you ever have any conversation? Well, let me ask you this first. Is it possible for lawyers to structure fees? Not the client, but the lawyer, if they're going to get a big fee from a large recovery and they decide they want the protection of an annuity, can they do that?
Yes, they can.
All right. And how does that work? Kind of the same thing?
It's the exact same manner as if the client were to do it. The check would have to come from the insurance carrier and or the defendant to fund the structured settlement annuity for the lawyer for their fee.
Did you ever have any discussion with Alex Murdaugh, either before or after the boat case, about structuring any fees that he had received in the case?
We had general conversations about structuring fees, but it would be the same conversation I would have with any attorney, like how you would do it, how you would go about doing it, and how checks would be made payable, et cetera.
Did you ever have any specific discussion after the boat case about the boat case and him wanting to structure any fees?
Not that I recall.
I want to take you to September 2021. Did you, around that time, receive a call from Lee Cope?
I did.
All right. And what did Mr. Cope ask you?
He called and asked me if he could, in confidence, give me a list of cases and see if we had any files on them. I told him that'd be fine. I was standing in my driveway. I wrote them down, got back with him later that evening, and let him know that we did not have any of those cases open.
Okay. He gave you a list of clients and asked if you had any structures open for those, or potential structures.
He had asked me if we had any files at all. Generally, what we will do is if an attorney calls, we will open the case immediately just so we have a name associated with the attorney.
Okay. And so he gave you a list of names. Did any of those names have any files?
No.
All right. Did he ask you about any banking that Forge Consulting LLC did?
He did.
And what was his question to you?
He asked me if we banked with Bank of America.
And what was your response?
I told him that we had banked with Bank of America, but had not for the last 3 or 4 years.
So you did not have an active account with Bank of America
We did not, no.
in September of 2021?
No, sir.
Did you have any subsequent conversation with Mr. Cope about the issues that he had raised with you?
I did. He called me the following day as well, which I believe was a Thursday, with another list of cases.
All right. And what was his inquiry to you?
Same inquiry. This time, the only one that popped up was the one I mentioned earlier, which is the Dion Martin case.
All right. And your response was there was a file, but it was never completed?
There was a file, but it was never completed, and we closed it out.
Did you ask him at this point, or did what was going on, or why these inquiries were being made?
I did not.
Did you ultimately find out what was going on and why these inquiries were being made?
I found out on Tuesday after Labor Day.
All right. What did you find out?
I spoke with Lee Cope, and he told me that Alex had been using an account called Forge to process the checks.
Is that account that he had been using, is that a legitimate Forge Consulting account?
Absolutely not.
Did any of that money that went into that account go to legitimate Forge?
No, sir.
Did Forge Consulting have anything to do with that particular account?
No, sir.
Let me show you a couple things real quick.
I mean, I feel like we already knew this information to a lot of ways, so this is very repetitive.
Marked as exhibit
I mean, he's the guy who can confirm this, but
this in camera hearing,
eh.
and just have you look at that.
Yeah, eventually you have to get to what does this have to do with the murder.
Name on that particular account.
Yes, sir.
That's the weakness for me.
Richard A. Murdaugh, sole
That's the
proprietor,
problem.
DBA Forge.
All right, and is that account a legitimate Forge account?
It is not a legitimate Forge Consulting account, no, sir.
Any money that went into that account, did it have any legitimate relationship to the services and business that y'all provide to plaintiffs and friends?
No, sir, none at all.
Looks like the chat is loving this guy's narration,
So
however. High
it's
props. for that.
328. You see that check right
I'm surprised he's not a radio host
Made out to
somewhere.
Forge?
Yes, sir.
Did that come to any legitimate Forge account?
It did not.
Stand by for me 1 second.
Abby hasn't been ruled admissible yet. We still have no ruling on the admissibility.
Your Honor, in sake of a little time, I believe defense is willing to concede that if we went through all these exhibits that we introduced in Ms. Seconder with all those checks made out to Forge from the PMPED trust account, for purposes of this hearing only, they will stipulate that none of those went to a legitimate Forge account and instead went to the Bank of America DBA, Richard Murdaugh DBA Forge account that he just testified is not a legitimate Forge account.
I want to be more careful with the words. We are not contesting that issue for purposes of this hearing. That's correct.
Fair enough. Moving on.
Coming back.
Accept that stipulation as well.
They're not contesting that these checks all went to this particular account and did not go to legitimate Forge. For purposes of this hearing alone, I think that's acceptable to the state, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Right. It's so stipulated.
Yeah, we're not contesting. That's
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yeah, we got it. Moving on.
Not contesting. Just want to be real quick. 327, is that legit?
No, sir.
326, is that legit?
No, sir.
$325, is that legit?
No, sir.
$324, is that legit?
No, sir.
$323, is that legit?
No, sir.
$322, is that legit?
No, sir.
Courtney in chat asks, "What is the nexus?" The nexus is an extra dimensional space anomaly
is that legit?
that, if you fall into, allows all your dreams to come true, but no time to
319, is that
pass.
legit?
No, sir.
318, is that legit?
No, sir.
317, is that legit?
No, sir.
Yeah, I wish when he finishes, the judge would say hammer
315,
time
is
and
that
drop the
legit?
gavel.
No, sir.
Too legit to quit, baby. Let's get this guy off the stand.
And finally, 311, is that legit?
No, sir.
And by asking you not legit, did you just look at the checks on those various exhibits?
I did.
And all the ones that had Forge on them from the client trust account, those are not checks that went to any legitimate Forge account, is that correct?
No, sir.
Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I believe that's all the questions I have for this witness. I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you. Just really quick, at any time, did you ever hand deliver any checks to Alex Murdaugh for Forge-related business?
No, sir.
And would that work?
I would not be delivering any checks. The only time that I would ever deliver a check would be made out to someone other than Forge. You would never make a check payable to us.
But you never had any legitimate business where I was like, hey, I'm gonna be in town, I'll come by and pick up the annuity, the check for the annuity or anything?
No.
Nothing further for purposes of this hearing at this time, Your Honor.
Defense.
Very briefly, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Gunn.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I am sure that your Forge Consulting LLC has done a full investigation into this matter.
Yes, sir, we have.
And in that investigation, did you find in any record of this account that Bank of America under Alex Murdaugh doing business as Forge, did you see the name Maggie Murdaugh or Paul Murdaugh as co-signatories to that account?
No, sir.
You seen any record, any document that Maggie Murdaugh or Paul Murdaugh had anything to do with this account?
No, sir.
Your company is an insurance agent. Did you ever sell any life insurance to Alex Murdaugh on the life of Maggie Murdaugh?
No, sir.
Did you ever sell any life insurance to Alex Murdaugh on the life of Paul Murdaugh?
No, sir.
All right, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Nothing to say, Your Honor.
Great.
May call your next witness.
Come back. Come back, Michael. We like your voice. Can we just have all witnesses? Can he be the interpreter for all
Call
witnesses
Chris Wilson.
so we can divorce more?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, he's downstairs. We'll get him right away.
What we just learned is what we already knew. Alex Murdaugh wrote a lot of checks to a company called Forge, which wasn't this company. It was his own personal thing. He just called it Forge to make it look like the money was going to this company, at least for the bookkeeping purposes of the law firm. So that was one of the ways that he evaded the law firm finding out about it, because the law firm does business with Forge. And so the checks that were paid to Forge on first inspection might look like they were paid to this company, but not so much. So we learned Alex Murdaugh is a thief. That's what we learned.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God? Proceed in the witness stand. State your name again for the record. Spell your last name, please.
My name is James Christopher Wilson, Wilson. I go by Chris.
Mr. Wilson, you understand that we're here for an in-camera hearing to determine the admissibility of your testimony?
I do.
All right, and you're a lawyer, so you get that.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not going to go into everything that I might cover with you in a trial, but I do want to focus on particularly the Ferris case. You know which one I'm referring to?
Sure.
First of all, though, just very quickly, you're a lawyer, is that correct?
I am, since 1998.
1998. And describe very quickly your practice for the record.
Actually, since 1995. I've had my own practice since 1998. In the last 15 years, I've done primarily personal injury work, automobile accidents, people that are injured at work, practice type cases, those things.
And where do you normally practice? Where's your home base?
My only office is in Bamberg.
Do a lot of claims work?
That's all I do anymore. For the last 15 years, that's really all I do.
And do you know the defendant?
I do.
And when did you get to know the defendant?
I've known Alex since we were in high school. Bamberg and Hampton. I grew up in Bamberg, and they're only about 30 miles apart. And so I knew of Alex and had been around him some growing up. We had some mutual friends. I was a lot closer to some other guys in Hampton that I grew up playing golf and things like that with, but I would cross paths with Alex. Played on the same baseball team one summer, I think like our senior years in high school or somewhere around high school age. Didn't really keep in touch with him or cross paths with him until we ended up going to law school, and we started law school together at Carolina. 3 years there together at law school and lived together part of the time.
Did y'all become friends?
We did.
Become close friends?
Very close.
Best friends?
He was one of my best friends, yes.
BFF.
And I thought, he was, and I thought he felt the same way about me.
You feel that way now?
I don't know how I feel now, Mr. Waters.
Fair enough. Over the years, as you developed that close friendship with Alec, did y'all also have a professional relationship as well?
We did. When I finished law school, I went to work in Greenville for a judge for a year. Alec went to Beaufort to work with a law firm there. So we'd see each other, but it was more socially then. When I moved back to Bamberg to start practicing where I'd grown up, and he moved back to Hampton a couple years later, we started doing a little bit more work together, and we've done cases together really since 1998. I opened up my own firm in 98. I think that's about the same time he had moved back to his firm. And it was a bigger firm with resources that I didn't have starting out on my own, and so we started working cases together and worked a lot together.
Tell me, for the record, how that works when you're in a different firm than the firm he was in, correct?
Yes.
And so when two lawyers from different firms, or three, however many it is, share a case, how do you handle the payment of the fees if there's a successful recovery?
Well, it really all depends on the agreement that's reached up front between the lawyers and with the client's consent. But generally, all the cases that I work with his firm and with most firms I do business with, it's a 50-50 split on the fee recovery, or at least an equal split. Maybe if there are more than two lawyers, it'll be an equal split across the board. But generally, it was just my firm and his firm with a 50-50 split on attorney's fees recovered, and each firm recovers whatever cost they've advanced in the case. And sometimes his firm would advance more of the cost because they had a larger number of lawyers bringing in more money than I was and could afford to handle some of the bigger costs. But it's kind of whoever got the bill paid the bill, and then we reimbursed at the end whoever had advanced the cost.
Okay.
The client signs off on all of that.
Who ultimately, in those situations where you're splitting a fee, is that a good way to call it?
Yes, sir.
Who handles the ultimate disbursement? How does that work?
Whichever lawyer receives the settlement checks or the checks to pay whatever verdict or judgment that was received. I can't say in every single case with Alex's firm, but in having gone back through my files and audited my paperwork, it looks like in almost every single case that we worked together, the disbursement, the money would come through to me and I would handle the disbursement. They were generally clients where I would associate his firm. They were my clients. They were people that had come to me, and I wanted them to, frankly, know that I was the person that took care of them, and if they needed anything, they could come back. And so I wanted to be the person handling that part of it also.
All right. So if the money comes through you, then just mechanically, how do you go about paying Alec in a case where y'all are splitting a fee, or paying the firm?
Money comes in. Client has to come sign the check or whatever it is, along with my firm if it's made payable. It's generally made payable to Wilson Law Group or Wilson Law Firm and the client. Client comes in and signs the check. I endorse the check. We deposit that into my trust account. If it has to sit under Supreme Court rules, sometimes it has to sit for 10 days or more. Some smaller checks don't. Once it's been in the account long enough to be able to be dispersed pursuant to our rules, then my bookkeeper does the checks that I instruct her to do, and I sign the checks to make disbursements. If they're checks to another law firm, then the money is dispersed to that firm.
All right. In the course of litigation, are there typically costs and expenses that accrue during the course of that litigation?
Almost always.
And do those typically get paid out of whatever settlement is reaching, assuming a successful result?
They do. All of my fee agreements and every lawyer I've ever worked with have a provision in there that the client understands that the fees are advanced by the lawyer, but upon recovery they're reimbursed or recovered by the lawyer.
In a particular case where you're splitting a fee and there were in fact fees and costs associated with a successful recovery, costs and expenses associated with a successful recovery, are those issued in a separate check typically, or a check together?
When I first started, I think my firm was doing cost and fees not just for other firms, but costs and fees that were payable to my firm in the same check. But, I mean, 10-plus years ago, if not longer, we started doing separate checks just to make the accounting and keeping up with it easier. So generally, it's a fee check and a separate cost check.
And in 2020 and 2021, were you issuing those separate checks?
Yes.
Very quickly, without getting into the details, did you have a case in Allendale where you split it with Alec in the early part of 2021?
Yes, sir.
All right. And ultimately, was there a recovery in that case?
There was.
And
it was actually 3 cases, but they were similar factually, and so we treated them as one case, but it was three separate plaintiffs, 3 separate cases.
And ultimately, did your office disperse the fees and the expense check to PMPED?
On all 3 cases, yes, sir.
And those checks were made out to what when you dispersed those?
All 3 of the fee checks were made payable to, I don't know if we used the acronym PMPED or if we actually spelled out Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Dietrich, and Ellsworth, but PMPED.
And generally, except for the Ferris case, which we'll talk about in a minute,
sure.
When you had those fee splits with Alec, were the checks made out to PMPED?
Yes,
They
sir.
were issued signed by you?
Yes, sir. And I'm the only person who can sign checks in my office. So, well, and now I had a partner at one time, but now I'm the only person that can sign checks.
Did you have a case involving Mack Trucks that involved Alec?
Yes, sir.
And can you describe to the court how you ended up getting that case and how you ultimately associated Alec in that case? Please?
Sure. And I've heard it referred to as the Ferris case, so Mack Trucks and Ferris. I'd rather refer to it as the Mack Trucks case. Another lawyer had contacted me about a case that he was working on. Felt like he had a wreck involving a tractor trailer and an automobile in which a gentleman was injured. I believe he had already filed suit against the tractor trailer company and its driver and maybe another party. Started looking at the case for and with him. It involved a drive shaft that had fallen out of a Mack truck into the interstate, and this gentleman had, and a number of other cars had hit that drive shaft. And in looking at it, and
Drive shaft fall out of truck. That's bad.
I and he together realized that there very likely could be a products liability case involving a defect with the drive shaft of the truck or something like that. So, so I reached out to Alec.
Sounds like a product liability case to me. Drive shaft is not supposed to fall out of truck. Product may be defective.
A lot was products liability cases, and we were pushing some deadlines to bring in all the parties that we needed to, and so I reached out pretty quickly because I knew we needed some help.
And did he agree to be part of that case?
He did.
As that litigation proceeded, did y'all have, as is typical, some discovery hearings, discovery motions, and that sort of thing?
Well, we had a number of them. I don't remember how many, but we had a number of different motions and discovery that went back and forth, documents being exchanged, things like that.
All right. And did that ultimately set up the prospect of a trial in that case?
It did, but it was unusual. It wasn't a jury trial like is normally done in personal injury cases. It was a non-jury trial tried before a circuit court judge with an admission of liability. We waived punitive damages, and there was an agreement between the parties that neither party would appeal the result.
And in a case, plaintiff's case, civil plaintiff's case like this, if there's a large recovery, let's say for the plaintiff, and the defendant decides to appeal, does that typically delay payment of the recovery until that appeal is heard and resolved?
I mean, it can. Appeals, you never know how long an appeal is going to take, and so if the losing party, the defendant, the company that you're suing, whoever it might be, decides to appeal, they can tie the verdict up for a while. If you win the appeal, you're going to recover cost and interest, so you know, that's the remedy, but it can tie up money for people that are injured that need that money.
Did y'all ultimately try that case in a bench trial?
We did.
What county was it?
Excuse me?
What county?
It was in Richland County, Columbia.
And when did y'all try that case?
The first part of January of 2021.
And who did the closing argument in that case?
Alec.
Did y'all ultimately there had been a concession of liability, so the amount was really what was in question. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many plaintiffs did you have?
There were actually two cases, when we call it Ferris or the Mack Trucks case throughout all of this, but there were actually two cases. The gentleman that was injured and then his wife, we brought a loss of consortium claim for her for the loss of companion services that she had lost from him. And just not to get too detailed, Mr. Ward, that her case had gone into default.
They're already too deep.
In other words, Mack Trucks hadn't answered the papers like they should have, and so they were in a really bad position on that case. And in the gentleman's case, they had answered, but we were discovering some things. When we were doing some discovery, it was clear they didn't want us looking.
I mean, dude, did he steal money from you or
So
what? What's
that's
up here?
why this deal,
Yeah, really?
everybody agreed to a non-jury trial without appeal with a waiver of punitive damages and an admission of liability was done. And we
Good
were in
Lord.
COVID, and it was going to take us a while to get a trial. So it worked out well for both parties, and the result worked out well for us.
And that's often how it goes in litigation.
So
Both
so
sides
you
kinda decide.
so who did the closing argument again?
Sometimes they
What's
have-
what's the question? I don't remember.
All right. Was there ultimately a verdict by the judge in that case?
Well, two verdicts since two cases, yes, sir.
And what were those amounts?
I believe it was $4 million for the injured man and 1.5 for the wife. I remember it was 5.5 combined, but I think it was 4 and 1.5.
Wow. Nice
So
verdict.
how did the fees break down, to the best of your recollection, that were going to be split among the three lawyers involved?
There were,
Let me ask you this. Do you remember how much Alex shared of the fees?
$792,000.
Okay. And yours?
There was a larger split to the attorney that initiated the case, but I believe Alec was $792. The math didn't work out perfectly. I was $791, and the other attorney was higher than that, but I don't remember the exact numbers.
In recognition of his origination.
Yes, sir.
In March of 2021, did you ultimately receive the monies and prepare for disbursement?
Yes, sir. I believe they came in late February because we dispersed in March, and I had to wait at least 10 days. Part of the money came by a wire, which would have been kind of immediately available and accessible, but it was a smaller portion of the money. The larger portion came in a check, and because it was such a sizable amount, I waited maybe 12 or 15 days or so. I didn't disperse on the 10th day.
And did you have a conversation with the defendant about dispersing those fees?
I had a conversation with Alec and with the other attorney I worked on the case with when the fees were ready to be dispersed.
What about your specific conversation with Alec? Did he make any requests of you or have any discussion with you about how to handle his $792,000 share of the fees?
He did.
And tell me about that conversation, please.
When I contacted him and told him we were getting ready to disperse and we would have checks ready, he indicated to me that he was looking to place his fees in an annuity. He called it like a structure. I've never done one of those before, so I didn't really know how it worked. I've never done structure for my fees myself. I've structured client money, but not my fees. He indicated he was looking to do a structure by putting the monies into annuities and that the checks needed to be made payable directly to him, that he had already cleared it with his firm, that the monies were going to be put on the books and accounted for, and he would be credited as having received those monies.
Based on his representations to you that he had cleared it with his firm, did you agree to do something different and make the checks directly out to him?
I did.
Betrayal of a friend, for law school friend. Betrayal of a guy you've been working with all these years. That's rough, man. That's rough. I can't even imagine, man. That sucks hard.
Very quickly, what's been marked as Exhibit 345.
Your friend comes to you and says, "Can you make it up this way?" Of course I can.
Purposes of this in-camera hearing, and see if you recognize that particular document.
I do.
All right, and what is that?
So this is the initial check that was written per Alex instructions directly to him on the gentleman's case for fees made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire, for $600,000. It's voided.
And why was it voided?
Because he instructed me afterwards, and I don't remember if it was in the same conversation or shortly thereafter. It must have been shortly thereafter, that the checks on that case needed to be made in 2 separate check payments. So he was doing 2 separate annuities.
Didn't he know Murdaugh was in a firm, though? Why would he think it would be okay to just cut this check out to him personally? Or I wonder why he thought that was okay.
Well, he was told by Murdaugh that he cleared it with the firm. You know, he's doing this unusual thing. You know, Murdaugh wants to set it up as a structured thing. He's not used to that, so he doesn't know.
And he trusts him.
And he's like, I need you to cut to me because of the way this works on my end, and I've cleared it with the firm. It's like, why wouldn't you trust your friend of 20 years?
Is the
They're like, okay.
Directly to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire, for $192,000, and that is on the loss of consortium case for the wife. And on the bottom, just like that $600,000 check that was voided, it indicates it was for fees. I guess the other writing on here is maybe from
I'm just
the
focused
checks.
on the checks.
It's something to do with the way we recovered the checks.
All right.
The back page looks like an endorsement. Pay Bank of America deposit only. Looks like a signature, Bank of America.
Okay. And again, I'm just asking you to see if you recognize those checks.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I recognize all
All right,
of them.
tell me the second check, just the amount and what that's for.
Yeah, just the amount.
Second check is for $225,000 payable directly to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire. It indicates on the bottom that it's for fees. This would be part of the rewrite of that $600,000 check that had been voided.
All right.
And then the third check is $375,000 check payable directly to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire, and it indicates fees, and that would be the remainder of the rewrite of that $600,000 check initially written that was voided.
All right. And those second two were rewritten. Why?
At Alex's request, he had indicated that he was putting the money into 2 different vehicles or annuities.
He betrayed his fellow law members at his firm, betrayed basically his partners, although not strictly partners because they're a C Corp, which is bizarre, but okay. So he betrays all of his associates that he's known for like 20 years at his own firm, betrays his law firm friends from this other, they grew up together, went to school together, known for 20 years. Alex Murdaugh is a bastard.
What did you do with those checks after you, the 3 checks after you had finally cut them?
Obviously, I signed them, and at some point in time, I think Alex sent somebody up to my office to pick them up. I don't think I delivered them. Oftentimes, I put checks in the mail. Sometimes when they're larger, I either offer to have them picked up or delivered, and I think he had somebody come pick those up from my office.
Like a law firm runner or somebody like that?
Something like that, yes, sir. I don't even think I was in the office when they picked it up.
You've known Alex for a long time, right?
Since they're since the mid '80s, mid '80s, yes, sir.
Worked with him for a long time?
Many times.
Did his explanation to you about what he was going to do, did that raise any suspicions with you, to your friend that you've known for such a long time?
No, sir. It was different, but it didn't raise any red flags or suspicions to me that anything wrong was going on.
Because you trusted your friend, right?
Very much.
Yep.
It's terrible. Tie it to the case.
What was your perception of Alex's general wealth and success?
Thought he made a lot more money than I did. Always seemed to do well in his practice. All I ever heard is that he was one of the biggest producers in the firm. It's his family's name on the firm, but they acted like it was his name on the firm too. He and I handled big cases together. When I talked to the partners and other members of that firm, they were talking about big cases that they were handling with him. Felt like he did really well. And We never got into direct discussions about the amount of money he made or the amount of money I made. We talked about, you know, sometimes business and sometimes money and sometimes things, but I always thought he made a lot of money.
Is that part of the reason why your suspicions didn't arise when you were asked to do this request by Alec?
I guess so. Not so much as just I'd never had any dealings with him that I had any reason to distrust what he was telling me.
Yep.
I mean, he was a partner in that firm. He had the authority, as far as I knew, to make decisions. If he'd have wanted to reduce the fee and take less, and it was payable to the firm, I wouldn't have questioned that. I didn't feel like he had to have his authority, his partner's approvals to make those type decisions.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as 347 and see if you recognize that document.
Yes, sir. The first check is a check that was made in May of 2021, May 13th, to Peters, Parker, Murdaugh, Ellsworth, and Dietrich for $14,619.13. I don't think on the bottom it says anything, but this was a cost reimbursement check on one of those two cases. And then the second check is a check made payable on the same day, May 13th, for the same amount of money plus 1 cent, so for 14 cents. And it was cost reimbursement in the other case. And that's made payable to the law firm also.
Who was your assistant or paralegal at this point in time?
Vicky. I mean, she's one of several, but Vicky is my primary paralegal.
At some point in May of 2021, did Vicky advise you of any inquiry coming from PMPED about where these fees were?
No, she didn't advise me in May about any inquiry about where the fees were. She had received an email in May from Alex Paralegal, Annette, that said, hey, we got the cost check, but we don't have the fees. Where are the fees? And she replied to that email to Annette and said, your boss has already been paid the fees just like mine and the other lawyer. Vicky replied to that email. I didn't know about that email until all of this came out in September of what was going on. I didn't know about that reply email to Annette. Vicky did receive an email, another email from Annette, and as I recall, it was an email that Annette had received from Jeannie Seckinger that Vicky did forward to me sometime towards the end of May. I think she had gotten it, but she was out on vacation for a couple of days, and when she got back, she forwarded it to me. And it was an email from Jeannie Seckinger that said something to the effect of, Alec thought he was owed more cost in the case, had some questions about cost, and they were trying to get some information so they could determine if they were owed more cost. She did forward me that email.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 348 for the purposes of this hearing. States 348, and see if you recognize that document.
Yes, sir. This looks like the email string where Jeannie Seckinger, the Chief Financial Officer at PMPED, emailed Annette Griswold, which was Alec's primary paralegal, basically says that Nicole, I don't even know who that is, brought them the expense check, and that didn't match their records. Alec thinks he has more outstanding cost, but can't say what, and they want to see if they can get some information concerning expenses and disbursements. Looks like Annette forwarded that to my paralegal, Vicky, on May the 27th. Vicky was out. Looks like Annette asked her again on June the 2nd if she could get her some information, and Vicki replied to Annette that she didn't deal with some of the documentation they were requesting, and so she would forward it to me.
And what, that's June the 2nd, when?
2021, June 2nd.
June 2nd, 2021.
Yes, sir.
At this point in time, are Alex fees still in your trust account?
No, sir. They were dispersed. The check was March. I don't know the exact date, but they were dispersed in 3 separate checks in March.
At some point in time around this June 2nd, thereabouts, did you receive any call from Lee Cope?
I believe I had a conversation with Lee Cope. I was trying a case in Hampton the week before that, and I was in and out of their office. And I believe I had a conversation with Lee. That would have been like the week of May the 24th or some of those days in there. And I believe I had a conversation with Lee. He asked me if all the money had been dispersed in the Ferris case. And I told him that it had not been, that we had some liens outstanding, medical bills and liens outstanding, and we were holding money for some additional costs in case things came in. And he didn't ask me any further questions. He did not mention that there were any issues or concerns about fees.
After you received that call from Lee Cope, well, what did you tell Lee Cope?
I told him I'd have to check into it.
After that, did you reach out to the defendant?
I did.
And what was your conversation with him?
I reached out to Alec and I said, Alec, hey, I don't know what all we talked about in that call, but at some point in time we talked about, I said, hey, I've got this email that's been forwarded to me by Vicki where your firm is saying that you believe you're owed more cost. I put the cost down on the disbursement sheet that you had given me. But if you've got more cost, just figure out what it is and get it to me. We're holding some money to deal with some medical bills and liens. And with the client's consent, we were holding some money in case additional costs come in. Sometimes costs are slow coming in, and that's normal. And if there's an issue, just let me know. He said, I'll check on it, or there's not an issue, or I'll check on it. And I said, hey, this is the case that I dispersed the fees to you, per your request. Is everything all right? And he said, yeah, I just got to make sure they know it's on the books the right way, and that this is the case that we've already worked out, the put it on the books.
Did he tell you he had structured those fees in annuities, as he had told you before?
Yeah, that he had put them in the annuities.
Put them in the annuities. Firm's going to make sure they're on the books.
As far as I knew, the firm was aware that the monies had been paid to him, that he was putting them into annuities, that they would credit him as already having been paid, and they would account for that whenever or however they split up money.
Just to be clear, those funds were not in your trust account. They were gone at that point.
Yes, sir. They've been gone since March or whenever those checks were cashed after I wrote them in March.
$792,000.
Yes, sir.
For purposes of this hearing, I'm not going to go into the night when Maggie and Paul were killed, but just very quickly, you did have some texts and calls with Alec that night. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were at the residence and responding as friends and family did in the aftermath of that event. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
After a few weeks after the murders, did you
I've got one. I got one.
You good? Take a second.
Man, you can see how much he personally is impacted by this.
I'm fine. Yes, sir. I'm fine.
A few weeks after the murders, did you have another conversation with Alec, asking him if everything had been handled with the firm and those fees?
Yes, sir. I don't remember if it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks or what it was. I mean, everybody was destroyed. I don't think anybody was focusing on that. I know I wasn't, but at some point in time after that, I just said, hey, is everything all right with the contact I got him with those fees? And he said it was.
at some point in mid-July 2021, over a month after the murders, did Alec call you up and ask you anything about these fees?
He did.
Tell me what your conversation with Alec was about these fees.
He contacted me and said that he was not able to structure the fees the way that he thought he was going to be able to do, that he had messed that up, and that the fees needed to be paid to the firm, and they needed to go back through my trust account.
Okay. And what did you say at that point?
I didn't see anything that caused me any red flags or anything, and felt like if that's what had to be done, that the fees had to be paid to his firm and needed to go back through my trust account. He could send me the money, and I could run it back through my trust account and then pay it to his firm.
So he's promising, he's saying, I will send you the money back. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ultimately receive any funds?
600,000 of the 792.
You only received 600,000?
Yes, sir.
And how did you receive that? Do you recall?
I think it came in two different wires, that either came on the same day or on back-to-back days.
Did one of those wires come from Palmetto State Bank for $350,000?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And that was on or about July 15th?
That sounds right, yes, sir.
And the other was about $250,000 on July 16th, 2021?
I believe from Bank of America, yes, sir.
That was only $600,000?
Yes, sir.
So you're short from what you'd already given to Alec, correct?
Yes, sir.
How much are you short?
$192,000.
$192,000.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a conversation with Alec about being short?
I did.
And what was your conversation with Alec?
He told me that he wasn't able to access the $192,000 immediately, that he had already put it into the annuity, but he couldn't do it the way he wanted to, but he couldn't access it because it would be penalized if it was withdrawn, and that he would get me the money.
So what did you do in response to what your friend told you to do, or told you about the reason why he was short $192,000?
I mean, at that point, I had an indication that I was supposed to have $792,000 in my trust account that was supposed to have been paid to his firm. I'm responsible for that trust account. I put $192,000 of my own money in that trust account to cover the shortfall.
Holy shit.
Based on his representation that he'd get you back?
Yes, sir.
He put $192,000 of his own money in the account because he trusted his friend. Holy shit. Dude. You stole $200,000 from your longtime friend. Damn. Shit. Wow.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 349, states 349 for this in-camera hearing, and do you recognize that?
I do.
Tell me what that is, please.
This is an email that I sent to Alec at his request. He said he needed to be able to provide it to his firm so they'd know the money was being held, and it was dated July 19th of 2021. It says, Alec, as discussed, I'm confirming that I'm holding in trust $600,000 in the gentleman's case and $192,000 in the lady's case, which represent attorney's fees. I'll continue to hold these monies in trust until I am instructed by you or your firm regarding payment.
Wonder if he stapled that to his trust account reconciliation. Probably not.
I wonder, as a result of all this, if he's had his own uncomfortable word with a bar exam somewhere, a bar committee somewhere.
From the law firm
Yeah.
saying, all right, go ahead and send us the 792.
Mr. Waters, I didn't hear anything else from the law firm at all until September the 3rd, 2021, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when Mr. Lee Cope called me. The first question he asked me was I still holding $792,000 in my firm? That seemed to be his first concern, and I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, we need to get that money paid to us. And then he told me that they had discovered a check that I think I remember him telling me that was from me to Alec in the firm, and that they had discovered that Alec was stealing money from the firm and from clients, and that he could not talk very long, and asked me not to say anything to anybody until the following Tuesday when they could issue a press release.
Slow down before we get there. And At some point in time in August, did you attend any event or any conference where you saw Alec?
I did.
And what was that?
It's called South Carolina Association of Justice now. I still call it the Trial Lawyers Association. We have an annual convention in Hilton Head every August, the first weekend, and I usually attend and was there. And Alec was there.
Did you see Alec there?
I did.
And did you have any conversation with him at that conference about the $192,000 that you covered for him when he was going to pay that back?
I believe I asked him about it, and he indicated he was working on it. Some discussion about his father's estate. His father had just passed, and there would be money coming from the estate, and then with Maggie's estate being tied up, also.
Okay. Did he say he might sell some property or something like that?
I think he did mention that he was working towards selling some property.
At this point in time, still with a couple of months after the tragic murders of Maggie and Paul, were you still very sensitive to your friend's emotional health and well-being?
Sure. I didn't push him.
Didn't push it?
No, sir.
Seems like he's just a really genuine guy. Seems like a good friend.
Yeah,
Loyal friend.
He wasn't trying to do
That
anything. Yeah,
conference where
he
you
got
asked him
smashed
about
here.
it, didn't want to push him. Did you have another conversation with him about when that money might be paid?
I believe I did, yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 350 for this hearing. See if you recognize that.
I do.
Tell me what that is.
It is a very rudimentary, handwritten, scratched-out promissory note that I asked Alec to sign for me, which he did August 17th of 2021, acknowledging that I had loaned him $192,000 that he would repay within 60 days, I think is what it says.
And tell me how the circumstances of how you came to get this, essentially on a folded piece of paper. This is a copy of it, right?
It is, yes, sir.
All right, tell me about it, please.
Promissory note written on a cocktail napkin.
I mean, I wanted to get repaid my money as quickly as possible, but that was more about, I was concerned, just like everybody else, everybody in his firm and everybody in his family, that he was going to do something to himself, that he was going to kill himself. And, I mean, I knew enough to know that that I couldn't make a claim against his estate if there wasn't something in writing. And so that was more, I went to him and said, Alec, look, I hate to even ask this, but I need to ask you to do this in case something happens to you. And I phrased it like if you get hit by a car or something, but it was more about worried about what he might do. And I need to ask you to do this so that if there's a problem, I can deal with it. And he did. He didn't have a problem with it.
Okay, that's a little cold.
You already said this part, but at some point a few weeks later, you get a call from Lee Cope asking about those fees and saying that Alec had been stealing money, right?
Yes, sir.
That hit you like a thunderbolt?
It knocked me down. I mean, I was with a group of guys. I could not talk. Lee told me he could not talk very long. I didn't know how to react.
Did you try to get in touch with Alec?
I did. I mean, I couldn't do it immediately. I think I spoke to Lee for just a minute. He told me I needed to call him right back. I called him back. We talked for just a minute. He couldn't talk long. He said he had other things to take care of to deal with all of what was going on.
Do you remember what day this is?
September 3rd, Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
2021?
2021. Yes, sir.
You remember it like it was yesterday?
I can tell you exactly where I was and who I was with.
Tell me more about what happened.
Oh dear.
I finished up what I was doing with that group. I think I tried to call Alec, or I know I texted him, and I believe I tried to call also, and I couldn't get him.
Okay. Did you continue to try to contact him?
I did. I think he did respond maybe that afternoon later and said, I forget what it was in a meeting or something. I'll call you back as soon as I can. But at some point in time, I kept trying to get him, and we did talk later.
All right. What did you talk about? What day was that when you finally were able to talk to him?
I think I did speak to him that evening, this Friday, September the 3rd, by phone. I don't remember the exact of the conversation, but I said,
Oh, the whole stream crashed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We did.
We're back. Sorry, chat. We're back. The whole stream crashed.
I got there before he did. I don't think I pulled in the driveway. I kind of waited out on the road. Pulled in the driveway. We went in the side door. The caregiver was there. We went out onto the front porch, and we talked on the front porch.
And what did he say to you?
I mean, the first thing I asked him is, Alec, what the F or what the H is going on here? What is going on? And have you done something else to me or that involves me that I don't know about? Because I know about this, and I've got to deal with this. But is there something else you've done that I don't know about that I need to be concerned with?
And what did he say?
He broke down crying. Said I can't right this second. He went inside, came back out with some paper towels, and told me that he had a drug problem, that he was addicted to opioids, and that he had been addicted for, I don't remember if he said 20 or 20 plus years, but for 20 years or so.
Did he say anything about the money?
He told me that he had been stealing money.
Did he have a particular phrase about what he had done to you?
Shit me up.
He said he shit you up.
Shit me up or shit me up or shit me off or something like that, but I think it was he'd shit me up.
And he said that he admitted to you he had been stealing client money?
Yes, sir.
So he confessed that to you, is that correct?
He said he had shit a lot of people up.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 313 in this in-camera hearing. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
I think this is the original of that $225,000 fee check written in the gentleman's case directly to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire.
Is that your signature on it?
It is.
Missing 2nd p.m. Tomorrow's missing.
How did that conversation end?
I don't remember exactly how it ended, Mr. Waters. I was so mad. I mean, I'd loved the guy for so long. And I probably still loved him a little bit, but I was so mad. And I don't remember how it ended. I left. I mean, I asked him, how did I not know these things or see these things? And we talked. He was concerned about me getting my $192,000 back. Seemed concerned. Told him I wasn't worried about that. At that point, I wanted to make sure there wasn't something else.
I need to go borrow some money from this
A
dude.
little bit before lunch on September 4th.
Yes, sir. We didn't leave. We didn't. I'm sure I yelled at the beginning, or at least raised my voice, but I didn't leave yelling and screaming and hollering. We didn't fight. But I left. I wasn't happy.
Where'd you go after you left? Do you remember?
I rode through Hampton. Actually, we threw Hardee's and grabbed something for a bite of lunch on the road and headed back to Columbia where I live.
That day, did you hear anything else about Alec?
I did.
About how long after you left Alec did you hear something?
I had stopped in my office in Bamberg or at the post office to pick something up, and I was somewhere between Bamberg and Columbia when I got a call. It was either from Randy or Lee Cope, but I believe it was Lee Cope.
And what were you informed?
That Alec had been shot in the head and that he was on a helicopter going to the hospital in Savannah. And I think it was Savannah Hospital, but they said the hospital, but I believe they said Savannah Hospital.
What'd you do in response to that information?
What the devil's going on? I thought he'd tried to kill himself. I didn't think he was suicidal when I left, but when I heard that, I thought he'd tried to kill himself.
Did you go to the scene, or did you return back home?
I went back home.
Did you try to reach out to Alec after that?
I did not. I talked to his brother Randy, I think some that same day and some on the next day. But by that time, frankly, all this had, for lack of a better term, blown up to where I didn't think I'd be able to talk to Alec. And I don't know that I wanted to.
Have you had a conversation with him since?
I have not spoken to him since that morning at Alameda.
Have you had any other communication with him?
He's texted me once or twice, to which I've responded something very generic, like "I'm thinking about your family." And I think he may have written a letter, some short letter that, frankly, I turned over to my lawyers.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 351. See if you recognize that.
I do.
And what is that?
This is one of the texts that I received from Alec and my response.
Is that a number you previously had recognized being Alex?
I don't know if I'd ever seen that number before, but it's not the normal cell phone number that I would have used to contact him or he to contact me. I mean, there was sometimes he'd tell me he was calling me from the phone in his car. Sometimes it would be a number I didn't recognize.
Screen there.
Yes, sir.
Does it say, "So sorry for all the havoc I created for you. I'd do anything to make it right"?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. That's all the questions for this in-camera hearing, Your Honor.
By the defense.
Good fucking luck on the. Yes. No, you have no questions? I'm like, good fucking luck on this. Damn. Shit.
So it's super terrible, but I didn't hear anything that connects it to the murder.
No, neither did I.
Yeah, good question,
Witnesses
Judge.
you anticipate on this matter?
There's a lot of moving parts, Your Honor. I do have a law firm witness that I would like to call on this particular matter, one of the partners. We have the Satterfield matter. There is a confession of judgment, but we can present testimony on that as well. And we have a bank witness to establish the financial condition of Alec at the time these murders happened, which was he was burning through cash like crazy. He was out of options. The $792,000 was gone in no time at all. And I think the evidence is very compelling that for an extended period of time he had been living in a velocity of money that is really quite stunning, and he constantly had to achieve more money to avoid the reckoning that was happening. I'm sorry, Mr. And so it will show on that particular day that on June 7th, 2021, when he's being asked about these Ferris fees, the financial condition is not good. There's not that money there. He's extremely leveraged in the debt that he has, and it will be part of a history where he is forced to do all these things that we've been showing through Ms. Seckinger to stay afloat and to stay one step ahead. And for the jury to understand the reality of what he was facing, they have to understand the extent of what is being potentially exposed. They have to understand why he would be doing these things and why he was out of time. This is not the kind of case where, and I don't know if you want legal argument at this point, but...
Well, I asked a question.
Yes, sir.
I guess this is still your answer. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Judge. So anyway, this is the kind of case where, for example, he mentions the Bose case out of the gate. The Boat case, the hearing was going to be that week. We will establish evidence that the hearing was to get access or get identification of his accounts. Once that happens, that he would be unable, there would be not long before what had been going on would be exposed. And what we're talking about, and this is really how it's different from some of the other res geste and other cases that you're looking at, is it's really about the fear of what is about to be exposed. And what we're talking about, again, is a decade of malfeasance and misappropriation that ultimately would result in the charges that it's resulted in, as well as loss of his livelihood and loss of his law degree. And that's the real fear that was there. And when we look at June 7th in particular, at that point in time, he's out of options. We've heard from Ms. Sechinger that in the past, if he'd been able to pay that money or repay that money, then he could always kick that can down the road. But on this particular day, the state believes we have evidence, and we believe it's a reasonable inference from those evidence that he was out of options. But for the jury to really understand what's going on, they have to understand the full picture of what this man has been doing and what he's been trying to hide. And frankly, what he was able to successfully hide in the wake of these murders. The bank witnesses will also establish, relevant specifically to this particular witness and the events that you've heard about, is that one of the first things that Mr. Murdaugh did, business-related, was to secure $600,000. He got a loan from PSB, Palmetto State Banks, that wasn't even on the books. They just wired the money. Russell Lafitte wired the money, $350. He borrowed $250,000 from another person, and that's the $600 that he gave to Chris, that he used to talk Chris into telling PMPED that all $792 were back in the account. And so, again, that's one of the first things he did to stave off the inquiry that very morning, 6/7/21, was to get that money in there, and it did. It staved off the inquiry. The fact that Ms. Sechinger, there had been a number of things that had been occurring over a while, ultimately turned her attention back to Alec. It doesn't change the fact that it did effectively delay that time period and delay the ultimate detection of that. And he was able to put that money in, much as he was able to do when he stole the $125,000 from his brother, or he used the firm credit card, or what we see throughout this, throughout the extent of his financial matters. So the bank witness ultimately will establish two things. Number one, his financial condition at the time, and number two, his efforts in the wake of the murders to secure that additional money so that he could get enough back to Chris Wilson to talk him into telling the law firm that there was nothing to see here, that everything was okay. And frankly, it worked until two things happened. Number one, Ms. Sechinger started to look back at the Hirschberg matter, and then more importantly, and we have another law firm witness. I don't know what the check's up on the screen. Stand by for me, Your Honor. They found this check right here, this very one, in his office, right around that same time in early September. And at that point in time, they knew that he had been lying to them about these particular fees. And that's what caused everything to unravel. And then, just like we see, Your Honor, with what happened on June 7th, 2021, within a short period of time, the side of the road happens. And Alec immediately claims that he was the victim of a horrible attack, and everyone immediately assumes that the bad guys are back. There's a symmetry, Your Honor, between what happens on the side of the road and what happens on June 7th, because when the hounds are at the door, when Hannibal's at the gates for Alex Murdaugh, violence happens. And the same thing happened on the side of the road that happened on June 7th. And for this jury to understand the real picture of this man that I will remind Your Honor, I know you're well aware of, that they have already repeatedly put into issue his character and what a loving father he was and all the rest of it. They need to understand really what this man was hiding.
No, you're not squeezing this into A1. No, not for me. Not happening.
The pressures of that are important.
Stop trying.
Understand.
You want to try to squeeze this into B? All right, but we're not squeezing this into A1.
Mr. Griffin, any comments you'd like to make?
Oh, yes.
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to respond.
I bet you have some thoughts.
What you've heard thus far today does not establish that Hannibal's at the gate in any form or fashion. What you heard from Ms. second juror, is that, what's the language she used? Hang on, I've got it right here. Quote, there's a history of trust and brotherhood in that firm, and that some similar events have happened in the past where Alec had been overdrawn with the firm through loan checks or expense checks, and that eventually the money gets paid back. And
Destiny
everyone
asked,
goes
"What's
about their merry
Hannibal?"
way.
History,
Hannibal.
man, history.
That
Hannibal
was
Lecter used to
basically
hang
what
out at the gate
she
a
testified
lot.
to, Your Honor, and the
No.
and this sort of concept that Alec committed murders to cause a delay in the firm investigating this diversion of fees was
Rome, baby,
debunked
Rome.
by her own testimony, where she said, number one, Mr. Randolph Murdaugh was going back in the hospital to die, and that I stopped in my tracks and I became a friend and stopped looking, and that Mr. Murdaugh did die. I mean, that's what stopped her conversation, and that's what stopped her inquiry on June the 7th, by her own testimony. And then you go forward, and then she says she passed it off to Lee Cope. And then Lee Cope kept following up, and he communicated with Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Wilson sent an email. Alec had gotten money back into the account. And frankly,
I'm awake.
this plays out.
I'm awake.
As we attach to our response the draft transcript from the trial testimony in Russell Lafitte's case, that Mr. Murdaugh had in progress at Palmetto State Bank a loan application to get refinancing, and that Maggie's murder stopped and delayed that, and it had the complete opposite effect. He wasn't at the end of his rope. The murder of Maggie, if we have to play out this, the murder of Maggie actually caused a delay in the refinancing of the Edisto house, and it precluded getting additional loans from Moselle. And so those are the facts, and how murdering Maggie Murdaugh and murdering Paul Murdaugh eased his financial stress. It didn't. There's no financial gain, as we said. There's no life insurance. There's nothing to be gained by it. And so there's no logical connection from his, disastrous financial house and potentially having to be answer to financial misconduct within the firm, losing his law license, being criminally prosecuted. And it's all just a theory. There's no facts. It's all just a theory. But the theory is the best way out is for him to murder his wife and son and put himself bullseye in that circle that you heard about in the testimony of this case, and that he is the prime suspect number one because he's the father, he's the husband, he finds the bodies, they show up, and he's holding a shotgun, and he does that to get out from under scrutiny of a $700,000 diversion of fees with a history of trust and brotherhood in that law firm. Your Honor, there is no logical connection.
I tend to agree with the defense, but I don't think they're going to
It's a
win.
motive, and we can have more testimony, but
I don't think.
it doesn't.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the defense.
And then
but,
if we go
yeah.
to 403 and unfair prejudice, you heard a lot
That
of unfair
too.
prejudice here, but the undue delay, confusion of the issues to the jury. They've got a whole lot more evidence about financial misconduct than they have about a murder and evidence of guilt in the murder case.
Yep.
And that's what this is all about.
Yep. Yep.
With regard to the list of other witnesses that Mr. Waters indicates that the state has,
The connection is way too speculative.
for purposes of the court being able to do an analysis as to whether there's clear and convincing evidence
There's 100% clear and convincing evidence. That's not the problem.
With regard to some of the witnesses, some of the files, you do not or did not contest them. But if you have a few employees from the law firm, including Lee Cope, Mr. Murdaugh's secretary or administrative assistant, excluding
Murdaugh.
someone from the bank. Who's the other person you mentioned?
Well, we have also the Satterfield, which of course we have a confession of judgment for purposes of this hearing, that might be sufficient for the court's analysis, although the circumstances I think are very relevant. And then with the boat case, the one thing I want to add, and that would be Mark Tinsley in the boat case, is to understand the context of the boat case and understand how this all relates to everything, is not only was the discovery there being sought by Mr. Tinsley, but there will be testimony, and again, this is all in transcripts, which they have, and I don't know. I've talked with the defense about, obviously they don't have to concede, and they'll be able to cross and all the rest of it, but it is in transcripts. They've had a chance to review it, whether or not that's sufficient, at least for an in-camera determination. But one of the things that Mark Tinsley will say was the very aggressive posture which they were taking in the boat case, which meant that Alex Murdaugh was not a defendant of convenience, that the goal of the litigation, at least as it related to him, was a personal recovery. And that is why he was proceeding so aggressively in that particular case. Mark Tinsley will also say that, and we'll talk about how that litigation was going, but we'll also say that after the crimes of June 7th, 2021, that landscape completely changed. This was an extremely significant liability, and the testimony will be that that aggressive posture, seeking a personal recovery from Alex Murdaugh, actually of $10 million, that they weren't coming off that, and that was the manner in which that litigation was going. Once the murders happened, that was done, and Mr. Tinsley will testify to that, at least the posture that they were taking.
I thought I had a volume booster in here somewhere. Well,
the court has heard sufficient amount of received sufficient amount of evidence to make a determination regarding convincing evidence involving the law firm, and do not need to hear from Mr. Cope or the other witness. What's her name?
Sweet.
Ms. Griswold, in order to make that determination of there being clear and convincing evidence. With regard to Satterfield, you do have a confession of judgment, which the court has not seen or reviewed. With regard to the boat case, there's been no testimony. In the record regarding the impact of that on Mr. Murdaugh's state of mind or the like. So Mr. Tinsley, particularly considering the representations by counsel that the plaintiffs in that case were just seeking a financial statement, basically. And so the court can hear from Mr. Tinsley, review the confession of judgment, then hear arguments from the parties once again regarding the admissibility of all of this as relates to these other bad acts, and also the limitation on this, if any.
Yes, sir. Two matters right now. I do have the confession of judgment, which I can mark, as well as the disbarment.
I don't believe that the rules require a full-blown trial on these matters for the court to make a determination clear and convincing evidence.
I do have two issues. It would be, of course, we have the bank witnesses to establish that financial condition, and there's that.
The bank witness is also included. I overlooked mentioning the bank witness.
I do have and that we can definitely do that in the morning. I do have a problem, unfortunately, that Mr. Tinsley is not available in the morning, but can be here first thing Monday morning, Your Honor. But we can handle the bank witnesses in the morning.
All right.
And again, we do have a transcript. Is the transcript?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we have filed a separate motion with the court on the admissibility of essentially Mr. Tinsley's testimony for any consideration by the court, because he's giving, a legal opinion. It's a judicial decision. It's not Mr. Tinsley's decision, and we've submitted that to the court. So we don't think anything Mr. Tinsley has to say would be relevant. We'd be prepared to argue that tomorrow or tonight if you'd like.
Well, I haven't received that motion.
Here's a clocked-in copy.
When was it clocked in?
January 24th, 2023.
January 24th. Last Tuesday? When was that? Last Tuesday?
Seems like yesterday.
That was last week.
I did see that. I didn't realize that was pertaining to Mr. Tinsley. Well, we'll address Mr. Tinsley's issue when Mr. Tinsley is available. I cannot conclude based on argument that his testimony will only be relate to a question of law. So we'll defer anything, any presentation until Mr. Tinsley is available, and then we can press on with the other witnesses tomorrow morning before the jury gets here at 11:30. We'll start at 9:30.
Note to self to reschedule my thing for tomorrow morning, because I'll cover the hearing.
Regarding
Let me
Satterfield,
do that now.
What's
It's 8:30 my time.
his position on that?
Reschedule to 8:30.
We agree that there's an order disbarring
Great,
that
done.
conduct, and they concluded that confession of judgment, even though it has a disclaimer. Anyway, the Supreme Court concluded that is an admission. So, for purposes of disbarment, and I'd be hard pressed to argue against that satisfying, clear, and convincing standard. That's all.
And what year was that? The wrongful conduct.
Well, yeah, well, the Satterfield matter, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was quite some time ago.
2019, 20.
I'm so loud. Dude, Brenda, I mean, I'll love, but people were saying I was so soft, and then I changed it because I was too soft, and now I'm too loud, and the court's too soft, and I'm too loud. I'm frustrated.
Issues separately. Aside from the court determining just the
very loud
issues in general regarding whether or not this testimony should be admitted on motive, identity, common scheme, race geste. There's a separate issue regarding remoteness. And of course, I know the state believes that this is a thread that's woven through all of one thing to the other that culminates in the conduct on June 7th. We'll hear arguments on that later.
Your Honor, not to belabor the point, the additional ground would be consciousness of guilt, which is a basis for admissibility. And again, that's kind of what we're talking about. I mean, that goes under
For the murder?
But
What?
the case law is long. The consciousness of guilt is fear of detection is a basis
You
for
submitted something on that?
I'll get you some additional cases on that, Your Honor. We'll have that for you by tomorrow.
What did he do to show consciousness of guilt? What did he do to show fear of detection?
Is going
Agreeing to
under
talk to the
consciousness of
police
guilt
and consenting to
wrong.
giving all the information and please look at my phones and search my house. Would that be the fear of detection? What the fuck are you talking about?
He's trying to avoid facing life without parole and the loss of his livelihood. And for the jury to understand that, it's more than just $792,000. It's this entire time period. And that is really the issue, is avoiding that detection.
What?
Okay. well,
You're
we've,
bootstrapping.
Yeah.
You're
Running up on
bootstrapping the
this
murder
guy.
that you can't connect to show consciousness of
at
guilt to
9:30.
the. You're bootstrapping the murder you can't connect to prove consciousness of guilt for the financial crimes he's not currently on trial for. To prove motive here. What the hell are you talking about? That is some bullshit. That's some grade A bullshit. Tell me I'm wrong, counselor. Tell me I'm wrong.
So he steals the money from this one friend,
Uh-huh.
and he's worried about getting found out about it. So he goes and kills his wife and his son. Why didn't he kill the friend if that's what he was trying to hide? I mean, why would you kill your wife and your son to try and hide the stuff that the other people already knew about? He's not going to avoid detection from financial crime by killing his wife and his son. He came up with that and said, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's like,
your point sucks.
Yeah. You're not belaboring it. It's just dumb.
No, it's bootstrapping because it's like you're trying to, it's basically assuming the very premise you're trying to prove. You're trying to use the murders, which you're currently on trial for, to prove consciousness of guilt of the thing, to give you the motive for the murders that you're trying to prove. And around we go. It's like, I don't think so. That's a dumb argument. So yeah, I continue to think they don't open the door. I know there's there's no door in sight. I see no door. I don't want to hear any more about door. The door sucks. If we're going to go to 404B and say we want motive, then you had me on Clear and Convincing long ago. You sold me. Please stop talking to me. But where's your nexus to tie it in? And their nexus is so speculative. Well, the walls were closing in. This had been a process that was devolving for months as he was becoming increasingly more desperate in his attempts to hide his things, to reach the ultimate point of desperation, the murders. What the fuck? It's like you don't have anything. You don't have like a fight, an argument, the wife going to like, you don't, this is, no, I don't like, and then of course it's really fucking prejudicial.
Yeah.
So the 403 is not looking too bad too. So you get me. And then apparently the judge was looking to, did you hear that earlier when I freaked out about that earlier? Because the judge was using 403 to admit things. I'm like, how's this a thing? I'm not admitting it under 404. I'm admitting it under 403. I'm like, no, you're not. That doesn't make any sense. How are you admitting things under 403? That's not 403. What are you doing?
So I see some comments there in your chat, and it's like, I thought this guy did it before they started the case, and in my opinion, he did it. But again, we're talking about proving a case, and we're talking about the state bringing in evidence, and from a legal analysis standpoint, if you're going to bring in these other bad acts, you need to show this connection. And yeah, of course, he's a financial fraudster. That's clear.
Seems like you got him on the financial fraud. Go charge those cases. That sounds great.
Yeah, and if you want to do the murder case, do it. But like any of these people, and not even with the friend, did they show any evidence that he killed these people to get any money, or so the theory is, the speculation is, well, he did it to create a diversion away from his financial disaster. And so why would you kill your wife and your son for that?
And if the idea is like the walls are closing, calling in, I don't think they were particularly closing in. At the time, at least to me, it's like he had already been confronted about this check once by his law firm. He was confronted a second time that day about it by the law firm, but they dropped the issue because his father was in the hospital. And so, like, why wouldn't he think like, okay, why wouldn't he think, okay, this is obviously gonna buy me more time? They're not going to harass me with my father in the hospital and then the death of my father. It's going to buy me more time. So it makes it less likely, not more. And that he seems to be interacting with his wife and son in a normal way and stuff like that. And it's like, And so the very day that his father goes to the hospital, he concocts this plan to kill his wife and son for no particular reason, somehow manages to hide all the evidence in a way that he's going to be able to resist a police search the next day against his property. He consents to talk to the police. He gives them an interview. Please look at my phone. Here's their passcodes. Please go look at the things. Please do whatever you need to do. I'm fully cooperating. But it's consciousness of guilt. What the hell are you talking about? This is the strangest consciousness of guilt I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I think he could have ended the day without trying to just throw up a thought that occurred in his head, because that didn't seem planned.
And then that was some bullshit bootstrapping. That was like it's a circular argument. It requires assuming the very premise you're trying to prove, and it's like no, and just no. And if somehow I could get past all that, 403 once again is not a rule to admit things; it's a rule to exclude things. It's a safety valve. It's if it's admissible, but how about no? That's 403. And I'm like, yeah, 403 is looking pretty good to me too, because this is pretty prejudicial and tangentially related, confuses the issue for the jury. It's no. And so like, yeah, it's like, no, I think my best judgment is no. I'm sticking with no. That's my considered judgment. How about no? Does no work for you?
I don't know if I can read this judge all the way because I haven't seen what he's been doing in this case, but I would think the logical thing to do is what you said, which is to say, look, you had clear and convincing evidence he did this bad stuff, but it's highly prejudicial. It's not very probative because you did not tie it to the murders, so I'm not letting it in.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're still talking about this for a minute, earlier in the case, the idea is, well, the truth is, whoever did the killings, they used two guns, a shotgun and a rifle.
Else is forgiven.
And if you have this, because I didn't know about this tight time frame until you mentioned it. If you're on this tight time frame, how much sense does it make to be using two different types of weapons and switching weapons? I mean, the quickest way to kill two people is just with one weapon. There's lots of things that could go wrong with switch. It's not a 3-gun match, and things happen when you're transitioning to weapons. Again, in my opinion, he probably did do it, but these are problems with the narrative. If I got back into the jury room to deliberate, it's like, that's another thing that doesn't make sense to me. And what are they doing to close the gap on that? They're trying to throw this Hail Mary to convince the judge to let all this bad stuff about him come in just to sway the jury that he's terrible, which he is terrible, so they can gloss over the weakness in maybe the primary case that they should have.
Yep. I just don't think the state has it. I think the judge is going to admit at least some of this. I don't think the judge is going to keep it out. That is the way that it seems to be. I know I'm tea leaf reading, but I think the judge is going to let some of this in. And I think that the jury is going to convict because they're going to hate him. And I think we're off to appeal, and the appeal looks pretty good because, yeah, this is a problem.
So he's got the criminal charges for his financial stuff separately that'll be tried later. Is that the idea for that?
I believe we have 16 separate indictments with 106 pending felonies.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, but he's stole $10 million from the client.
Good Lord.
So he's got some financial problems. It sounds like
it's a lot of biscuits.
Yeah, there's a lot of biscuits. That is true. Yeah, that is very, very true. So I'm not really sure. I'll just say this. I mean, maybe I'm a sucker for my friends or anything, but I could totally see myself doing what that attorney did for a much less close friend. Like I mean, I don't know the scenario where it is where I'm in business with one of my fellow members of LawTube that I know just kind of as acquaintances. But if they told me, like, I need you to write the check out to me versus the firm, and they told me a story that's even mildly convincing, I probably do it. And it's like, because I'm like, well, I trust these people, so I'm not sure what it says about me or me being a sucker or all the rest of it, but it's like, well, yeah. So, and I can understand him feeling really, really betrayed when it's his 20-year friend. They grew up together, they've done business together, they've worked together, and he feels betrayed and probably had a very, very uncomfortable conversations with the bar and the sled and the Secret Service and probably every fucking one else.
So that was kind of an underwhelming day, it seems like, for the prosecution to me. Just sitting here waiting for something positive to happen on their side. I didn't hear it.
Yeah. So, yeah. But if they're allowed to testify, they'll convict for that reason. So that's why they shouldn't. Well, we're going to find out more, I suppose, tomorrow in this continuing hearing. I'm also a little bit amazed that we're doing this like now, as opposed to, before the trial started, when you normally do preliminary stuff. Normally you do preliminary in a preliminary fashion. And why we've kicked this obvious can this far down the road, so we're doing preliminary hearings in the middle of the trial, is a little bit bizarro, but that's apparently where we're at in this thing. And yeah.
Didn't they do some kind of speedy trial thing on this or whatever? And maybe that's one reason why they didn't resolve all the evidence motions ahead of time.
Speedy trial, which seems like, in retrospect, the best speedy trial decision ever. It's like this because the state's not ready to go.
Yeah,
and it's like it's a big risk, but it seems like it paid off. So okay, here we are. So yeah, I mean maybe they thought. Well, I don't know what they thought, but it just seems so much crap. So tell me a little bit about stuff that's coming up on your channel. Grift for me for a little while.
Let's see. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about the Manson stuff with Manson cases. And Andrea Burkhardt is the plan there. Because
Andrea Burkhardt is a great get. I think she's the most underrated person in the milieu that is the law tube genre. She's a smart cookie.
Yeah, when I first saw her, I was watching her on something she did quite a while back, but I noticed when she was talking about the arguments of the parties that she was going into the cases they cited and into the fact patterns of the cases they cited, and it was good research, and so I knew she was trying to get the right answers. And with this new case, she's brought up some new angles, and it's complicated, and because of all the statute of limitations changes keep going around the country where they just change them every day. And then all of a sudden you can sue for something that happened 1,000 years ago in this state, but this state 700 years ago. And it's only good for a year with a discount coupon of 20%. And it's, for a long period, the law was the same. And now in this sector of sexual assault, it's changing all the time.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun conversation. And he was in the news recently, so there's more things to talk about there with respect to the cases. There's been a settlement and new things brought up, and so things are just constantly developing. If that ever winds up going to trial, that should be a lot of fun to cover someday.
That would be insane if it did, yeah. I don't think so, though.
Yeah, so that's cool. So do you have a standard release schedule, or what is your sort of standard, I guess, what is your release schedule?
I would say no. Just, as things kind of go on and it gets interesting or curious, then I throw a video out. And at least for the Manson stuff, it's like those cases, I've been telling people, they're going to calm down. Cases don't have stuff all the time. But yet in his sector, with as many suits as he has done that. And people, will send me questions and things. And it's like, that's a good question. I'll try and track down the answer for him. So it ends up, I put out a few videos a week, but it's not at any necessarily any given particular moment.
Also, I'm going to make
It looks like Kurt has dropped off of my screen. Not sure what happened there.
Oh no, I guess I guess you couldn't hear me. I was making I assumed you could still hear me even when I hid myself. I was saying, could you just walk us through your office and the things that are on and around your office, because it's cool and I want to see stuff.
Let's see here if I can.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes,
fantastic. All right. Now. Fantastic. Great. So that was my fault. Yeah, just walk us through the office and the stuff you got.
Yeah, I can't move the camera because it's up on
That's
the screen.
Fine.
But lots of books here. Harvard classics up top. A lot of just classic stuff. It's not really legal stuff. A lot of military history over here that I want to believe is because of the Manson stuff. Religious sector here, and then Thomas Jefferson and other founding individuals of the country. And then behind the camera is places where people sat when they come in here. This is in my house. So this is just where I get to do some work here. If I need to focus, I come in this room. And it's not the most interesting room in the house, that's for sure, but it is a good place to work and hang out. And that's pretty much it, I think. That's in here.
Over on your right-hand shoulder, you got a little statue out there over there?
Yeah, and I'll change that out every once in a while because sometimes people have said, "Hey, you're just running a green screen, bro." So I will move things around.
No, that doesn't look anything like a green screen at all.
I did get that though, but I will prove it on your stream first by actually removing something from the background, which I don't think is possible in a green screen. So
that would be hard. That'd be some Harry Potter shit.
Yeah, that should settle that controversy if it still was one.
No, it looks really, really cool. I really like the setup. And what are you using for your camera and mic and lighting setup?
Yeah, just a good old Shure mic here, which is really good. And then there's some Ring stuff here to get some light in the room because it's dark in Raleigh. And a Logitech camera, which has every time I turn it on, the light's all different. So I try and balance it out. Sometimes
you're just using like a 920 Logitech?
I don't know. I think it's a newer one than that.
Basic webcam.
Yeah, it just clicks on the top of the thing. And sometimes I look like oranger than Donald Trump. Sometimes I look washed out. And the lighting's always changing. I haven't figured that out. I'm not a Steven Spielberg, I guess.
All right, cool, man. Well, it's a really cool setup, and I think you have a lot to be proud of. So I would recommend checking out Southern Law's channel for some good Southern law, and you can learn about North Carolina, I guess. That's fine. So, yeah.
I'm not from North Carolina, but I will defend it. It's a good state. I'm from Virginia, so I was probably used to make fun of it too.
That's fine. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off tomorrow. We will be on tomorrow at the regular time. That's 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, for, I suppose, 2 hours worth of additional hearing on the admissibility and maybe a ruling on that, and then some further evidence and stuff that takes us into Friday. This is already been scheduled for tomorrow, so you should be automatically redirected there as well as always. Thank you to everyone who's here as always. Make sure to, if you really want to help me out, the easiest thing you could do to help me out is just help spread the word. You can retweet tomorrow's link. You can send something on a social media. If you're a member of like some sort of chat room or Discord or something, you can tell those people. But just to help get the word out and stuff like that, because I need you. I need you because I'm fed by your presence. It encourages me and enthralls me. So if you want me to continue going, I need people. Please send the people to me. So if you could help out with all those things, that would be great. My guest has been Southern Law. I've been Uncivil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all is well. Cheers, my friends. And goodbye.
Thanks, Kurt.